You okay one more time?
Warm welcome to you all to our council meeting today, the 27th of August. A particularly warm welcome to members of the public who are in our public gallery at safe distances, and also to all of our staff members who are here to support our meeting today. I'm going to pass over to Councillor Benny to open our meeting with a karakia.
Po hihiri, po ramarama, po o te whakaaro, po o te tangata, po o te araha. Te po e hirine i a tātou, Māori ora ki a tātou. Haumie, huie, tātai. The translation is, we have a plan. However, if we find ourselves challenged, look for guidance outside. Look for the people that build strength amongst us. Above all, do it with kindness and compassion. Be positive.
Councillors, a reminder today, if there are any items on the agenda to which you have an interest, please declare that interest at the beginning of the item. We have no apologies today, so we'll move straight into the public forum. We have an apology from Chris Twiss. He is Auckland-based and therefore unable to attend the public forum today and will be rescheduled to a future meeting. Which brings our first speaker to be Beverly Woods. A very warm welcome to you, Bev. And councillors, you'll have on your tables a copy of Bev's presentation. So please feel free to come forward. Just to members of the public, we apologise that we're a bit cramped because of the social distancing that we're required on alert level 2. We only have one desk available for speakers, so fortunately for Bev, she's just a one person. And we're just, you'll be familiar with the process, but in the public forum you have the opportunity to speak to us for 5 minutes. And councillors, if you have any questions for clarification of the speaker at the end, otherwise we'll then move on to the next speaker. So warm welcome to you, Bev. Over to you.
Kia ora. A discussion of the Whangarei District Council 2009 Vehicles on Beaches bylaw, called Beverly Woods Aho. Over 12 years ago, in the WDC Ruakaka Recreation Reserve, there was a blowout in the sand dunes in front of the motel, with 3-metre high sides which the four-wheel drives had carved into a base of clay. The kink in the blowout meant that people from the beach could not see the four-wheel drives coming, and vice versa. It was very dangerous TV3 made an item on it, no reaction. Our group placed bollards into concrete and blocked the blowout. The police took them away, no reaction. Until many months later, the WDC placed a fence around the dunes, which are now covered with biodiversity. Today, that reserve is where the airflow area of the WDC 2009 Vehicles on Beaches bylaw goes through. This bylaw bans vehicles from the Bream Bay access to the end of the Ruakaka spit. The WDC airflow area goes from the Bream Bay accessway along the coast to the spit. About 2/3 of the way along, this airflow goes right into the Ruakaka Wildlife Refuge. This airflow area changes by the minute, so though theoretically defined on the map, it is in reality impossible to be so defined unless at a specific moment. The following is significant. WDC was given just that airflow strip for vehicles. No more, no less, to stop the vehicles. And just the last third is in the wildlife refuge. But the NRC also has jurisdiction in that airflow area for other activities, because it is also the coastal marine area. The CMA is from the mean high water spring to 12 nautical miles out to the coast. This is why they could act on issues like kite service. The 2009 bylaw, as pertains to the refuge area, protects only the health and safety of the public, with no mention of biodiversity. The Wildlife Refuge Act 1953, as pertains to the bylaw spit area, covers any activity that causes wildlife to leave the refuge, assuming that covers vehicles. This overlapping area is then again overlapped on the spit by the Ruakaka Scenic Reserves Act and the Northern Reserves Bylaws Act, both pursuant to the Reserves Act 2007, which states, no vehicle shall cause danger to persons, indigenous flora and fauna, and natural features and landforms. Thus, there are those 4 legislative protections on the spit as described. Plus, NRC has that jurisdiction over all the coastal marine area other than the WDC strip for vehicles. Which piece of legislation has precedence? Shall I stop?
That's 1 minute to go. Is that correct? Sorry, carry on.
The New Zealand Coastal Policy Statement asks for an integrated management policy for if the bylaw had protected the health and safety of the public and biodiversity, that would be integration. Why did NRC Regional Policy Statement give specific mention in their biodiversity plan to endangered ecosystems and then give WDC the right to only protect people in a wildlife refuge? Where the bylaws strip starts is just before the surf club. There is no refuge there, just beach people. They are protected by the very fact of their location. There is great confusion about visualising this legislation. If one is in the bylaw strip of the refuge, is either side of the strip a refuge but not the strip itself? All legislation has to prove to be legally ineffective. 4-wheel drives, mostly with male drivers, regularly cruise the area, intimidating citizens and even injuring them. They gouge the area where birds nest and destabilise the lower dunes. Climate change is giving us weather that is more intense. The RMA replacement talks of emphasis on biodiversity. A new draft national policy statement for biodiversity is out now. WC must recognise that certain people will never ever change, nor will they ever obey any law on the beach. This could be a socio-economic situation. It could be aligned to the fun of pokie machines, entertainment that is easily accessed and carrying a gung-ho element of defiance. If barriers are not used to stop destruction by lawless citizens, then it seems what is happening is exactly the same as happened in front of the motel. If the Act has precedence, then by not acting is WDC jeopardising the personal safety of citizens and indirectly the split biodiversity. If the bylaw was enforced and the words biodiversity inserted, NZCPS would be integrated and all indigeneity and landforms in this area would be protected as well as people. The world is changing, please change with it. WDC is morally, legally and ecologically obliged to use their legislative powers to stabilise an increasingly unstable world. Thank you.
Thank you, Bev. Councillors, are there any questions for you for clarification? We really appreciate you coming to present to the public forum today, Bev, and we thank you for providing us with your written statement. Councillors, our next presenters Amber Fairberg and Miles, I believe, is also going to be speaking to us. So it's our pleasure to welcome you here today, Amber and Miles. Hopefully there's enough room for you both up there.
Yes, we can make room.
Great.
We don't need to social distance from each other.
Your family bubble.
Yes. Good morning. Thank you for having us. My name is Amber Fairberg, and I live in Nguru. I have two children, Miles, who's here with me, and Eliana, who both go to Nguru school. I'm here because we have a problem in Nguru. There is not a single safe place in the entire village to cross Nguru Road. Children cannot safely cross on their way to and from school. Residents of our retirement village cannot safely cross to enjoy the waterfront. Holidaymakers cannot cross for a swim. Families cannot safely bike the length of the village as the footpath requires that you cross the road. And while the number of families and year-long residents continues to grow in Nguru and in the Tutukaka coast, so does the traffic that goes through. So do the logging trucks, the construction vehicles, the weekenders who pass through. And so with that growth, the danger grows. But this problem isn't new. And I am not alone in recognizing it. There have been over 250 community members who've already signed a petition, which was formally submitted to this body yesterday, to designate 2 pedestrian right-of-way crossings in Nguru. One at the shops in front of the Solitaire Cafe, and the other at the intersection of Shoebridge Crescent. Some of those community members are actually here with me today in support. And all of them have a story that led them to sign the petition or to be here today. I ask that you read it, and that you read all of its comments to understand why this is so important and why it's an issue that can't wait until next year, until the next budget cycle, or the one after that. I'm here and these community members are here because we've all witnessed too many what we call near misses. We've had too many heart-stopping moments with our kids, too many grab them, yank them out of the way of a car, and be grateful that everything was fine. We're here because to do nothing is to invite tragedy, and it feels inevitable. And that is something we cannot accept. So, we, the community, feel and ask that we take the first and most obvious step to beginning to solve this problem. Where there is no safe place to cross the road, let's please create one. I know that there's a lot to do to make Nguru Road safer. That problem is also not new. I know that there are long-term plans to review speed limits, to talk about the school zone, and to potentially revamp the entire waterfront. What we're asking is that this project not wait to be joined up with those that have uncertain start dates and uncertain end dates. We ask that this project be prioritized now. As community members, we already met with the district infrastructure team and they agreed that this was an urgent need. I spoke to Councilwoman Anna Murphy and she expressed that she agreed that this was an urgent need. Does that mean that I'm wrong?
Good minutes ago.
Okay.
But we have time for mines.
Thank you. But they all agreed that this was an urgent problem and that this was a good first step to solving that problem. What they do tell me is that they don't have allocated funding. So I'm asking you to allocate, or if necessary, reallocate the funds to prioritize a crossing at least at the shops, and to do so immediately. Because what we, the community, cannot and will not accept is a wait-and-see approach. Wait and see if the school speed study eventually solves this problem. Wait and see if the waterfront revamp eventually maybe solves this problem. Wait and see if we all start following the speed limit, which probably won't happen. Wait and see until a child ends up in hospital or worse. We've been lucky so far, and we can't count on that luck. As a parent, it's my job to keep my children safe, but this is something I can't do and we can't do without your help. And as the council, it's your job to keep us safe and to help keep him safe. So, with that, I will pass it off to Miles Fagerberg, who has prepared some remarks for you.
Good morning, members of the district council. My name is Miles and I graduated from school. I'm 8 years old. Today I am here to ask you to put up 2 zebras in the road. Not the horsey kind of thing, but the kind that helps you cross the street. I cross the street when I go to school or when I come home. There are a lot of cars that go fast and do not stop for me or other traffic. I do not feel safe when I cross the street. It's up to the adults to keep the children safe. To keep us safe, you can put up a zebra. It will make the community safer. If you put up a zebra, it will make a big difference.
Thank you, Miles. For those of you who couldn't quite hear Miles' voice, he was asking us to put up 2 zebras, but not the horsey kind from Africa, but the kind that helps you cross the street. And I thought that was absolutely brilliant. Well done, Miles. You're well on the way to changing the world, which is your aim, I believe. Thank you both for your presentation. Councillors, any questions for Admiral Miles? Thank you.
Thank you.
And councillors, just to let you know that the petition will be coming forward to the Infrastructure Committee in September, where it will be on the form council agenda, so you will get a chance to read all of those comments that Councillor mentioned. Councillors, our next people to present at the public forum are Nadia and Skylar from Tikimura High School. Very welcome to you both. Please come forward. And again, you've got 5 minutes to speak to us. And welcome. Oh, you do a presentation.
Morena, kia ora tātou. Thank you to everyone here for allowing us to speak on behalf of our school. My name is Skylar.
And I'm Nadia. We are both senior students at Tikipuna High School. We would like to bring to your attention a safety issue that we feel needs to be addressed immediately.
Might need to be turned on the side, so apologies for that. Stop the clock. Yeah. Okay, we'll control it from the end.
Just nod it there.
And your time starts again.
What we're asking.
As students at Tikipuna High School, we have both seen the dangers of the open roads surrounding our school, before, during and after school hours.
We want the council to consider putting 2 pedestrian crossings in the areas we have marked in the photo on the slide. One person would be located on Hawks Road outside the front school gate and a second on Kitty Butter Road outside the second school gate.
Both exits are frequently filled with masses of students exiting and entering the premises, as there are two main gates. Because of this, we believe that pedestrian crossings are absolutely essential for the continued safety of not only our school, but the wider Tikipuna community.
There are many reasons why these crossings are necessary. One of them is the benefit that our community will have.
The Tikipuna community is made up of a few educational institutions and establishments. All as collectives, the public would be able to access and utilize these crossings to ensure the safety of themselves and their loved ones, who should not have their safety put at risk in such easily avoided traffic altercations.
Every day, we see members of our public, members of our community crossing streets, having to either wait for the road to clear, or on days where that's not possible, having to weave through the traffic flow in order to get to the other side, and in many cases with young children too. Leading us to our next point. We've heard several comments stating these roads are busy roads, and how despite the 40k speed limit, often cars are driving past at closer to 50 km an hour, which puts our students and other pedestrians in danger, as well as endangering other vehicles.
By adding pedestrian crossings to these areas, we would be ensuring the safety of the public, because traffic would be forced to slow down to a slower and safer speed for everyone.
Our next and possibly most important point is in regard to the fact that in and around school zones, the safety of students and members of the public should be of the utmost importance.
We feel that our safety is not being considered strongly enough as a collective with the absence of such, compromising the overall well-being of the public but also our school and community.
Our roads are not used by just students of our schools, but also students of other schools who catch the bus in both the morning and the afternoon. These schools include
Carmel Intermediate, Pompelia Catholic College, Carmel High School, Dargaville High School, Tikipuna Primary, Whangarei Boys and Girls High School, and also Forest View Kindergarten. These students all range in age, with some as young as 4 or 5 to our senior students aged 17 and 18. This is in addition to the new subdivision, which will attract more families to the area, and also the 2 retirement villages on each side of our school.
We all deserve to be safe and protected when attending school. And when our school is right next to 2 incredibly busy roads, it is difficult for anyone, especially younger kids, to be safe while crossing the road if we do not have access to a pedestrian crossing.
Thank you for your time in considering the safety of our community.
Thank you, Skylar. Thank you, Nadia. Councillors, any questions for these fabulous students? Councillor Martin?
Could you make that presentation available to the spatial plan so that we can incorporate that and be in touch? That'll be helpful. Because we are doing the plan for that whole year.
Thank you very much for your presentation today. And lucky it was a teacher-only day. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
If you wouldn't mind leaving us a printed copy of your, is that okay? We've got that as well? Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it. Councillors, also we had a notification from Brian May that he has cancelled his request to speak to our public forum today. So that is the end of the public forum. I'm going to reorder the agenda and bring forward item 7.1, the police report, because we have Area Commander Martin Ruth in the chambers with us today. Thank you very much to all our members of the public for coming to the presentations. You're very welcome to stay or go as you see fit. Warm welcome to you, Marty.
Morning, worship councillors. Pretty hard to follow your thoughts.
Yes.
So thank you for letting me come today and speak to you. So it's kind of a roundup of where we are, where we've been, what's happening. some of the new initiatives and what we're doing with our mini staff. So I'll start with our P21 resource, which is 86 extra police people for Northland. So in the last year of that funding, so they've been put to good use. In Monterey Copper, we've strengthened up some of our investigative crime resolution groups, detective crime unit, which deals with serious crime victimisations, which are burglaries, thieves, large thieves, unlawful takings and that kind of offending. In that space we're doing very well. We've driven crime down significantly. We're tracking lower than the last couple of years for our serious crime victimisation. Looking very good in that space. What's occupied us probably in the last 3 or 4 months, there's no secret, our COVID response for Northland has been significant. Reassurance for Papua-Niue has been significant for us, making sure those communities are safe, working with them in a partnership to make sure that they are reassured that the spread of the virus will come through our rural communities here in Northland. And that continues to this day. In fact, we've been now taking individuals down to the northern checkpoint in Auckland, just so they can see with their own eyes what we're doing to try and stop the spread and contain the people of Metro from moving north without proper authority.
Martin, would you mind just raising your voice a little?
Sure.
Thank you.
So probably one of the significant areas of growth for us is alternative resolutions and pathways. We've got a lot of partnership reviews going on, particularly in the youth space in terms of alternative pathways for offenders, young people, keep them out of the courts, try and show them different paths. So there's been a lot of growth in that space. Our youth teams we've been surviving on low numbers for our school community officers for the last 3 or 4 years. That's grown by about 400%. We've got a sergeant and quite a few constables in that space now. We've met with all the high school principals. A lot of growth, particularly in the youth space, which is really cool. I also want to talk briefly about our relationship with City Safe. For us, that's been a standout partnership. The initiatives there have proven to be very, very effective in keeping the CBD a safer place for all our public to come and go. In fact, we have a little project, a little side project where we're applying the proceeds of grant fund to get some ANPR, automatic number plate recognition cameras around the CBD to help us just control some of the vehicle crime that we get from time to time. Just road safety. September will be speed for us. And we'll focus on that throughout Northland. That's probably a kind of a roundup of where we are. The jewel in the crown for us has been the reduction in crime and looking forward, alternative resolutions and pathways that we are pursuing to keep people out of the justice system, which is working very well for us. So we're reaching out to a lot of partners, other government agencies, to NGOs to help us stand up some credible, some robust systems and pathways that we can put people into those programs to keep them out of court and address the underlying issues for their offending. So that's really a summary of where we are.
Thank you, Martin. I'm sure there will be questions. And surprise, surprise. Councillor Bennett.
Surprise. Please, we've given you a little chair there too. That's good. So a couple of comments on what you discussed. The City Safe one is an interesting one. So, and I know as head of the committee in relation to City Safe, we've discussed a couple of times about how the concern is they don't become a de facto police force. And I know yesterday it's quite active. You come here with that incident that happened in town yesterday with and I see now that the City Safe are wearing staggered vests, which is smart, but it's a little bit of a concern. I'm just be interested in your comments on the police, especially the CBD area, police in the CBD area. I mean, do we get to the stage where they become like a private police force?
Firstly, they're never designed for that purpose. They're eyes and ears only. They have some rules of engagement, and their engagement is minimal. Their first response is to phone us, get hold of us, and that's the training that the joint partnership we have. Never intended to be in that space, and nor will it be in that space. We don't want to put them in harm's way. They're simply eyes and ears. They engage with people in a very, very productive manner. And once they've made an assessment that it's safe to talk to them. So they don't go where angels fear the tree. Their job is to get hold of us and bring us to our attention what's actually going on in town. So with regard to that, it's extremely beneficial to us. We're very grateful for the extra eyes and ears, and they are dedicated people doing a great job. And I don't think there's been an incident yet where it's been harmed as a result of directions from CDC.
Yeah, and I would hope that sort of come to carry on. So you're comfortable with the level of city safe that we have now and how that they do communicate with the police? You're comfortable?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Look, it's great. The combination of that and the monitoring of the CCTV is bang we have there in the watch house at our district command centre is gold for us. It's gold for the community. It gets on top of crime quickly. We can respond a lot quicker. They see things that we don't see. It's an extra pair of eyes, an extra set of ears, and we're very grateful.
Just one, and so the second thing, and you'll see from today the speakers we've had, pretty much the concern is road safety.
Yeah.
And that's something that, as council laws, we see that it's so slow. I mean, we talked about pedestrian crossings at Nangaru and Tikipunga, and to me, we should do that tomorrow. And I know that if we put those in and we put in traffic calming, then it would help with the police as well. And I'm just putting it out there that it would be really great to work with you, to work with the police, to get those measures in place, which would take work off you, which would take a whole heap of work. We're looking at Tikipunga with the new plan we have there of the road safety, the slow streets, and I just think it's just a great thing if we can get help and input from you guys and as a council, and we can really get in and achieve some stuff. And slow streets, it might piss a few people off, but I think we achieve some really good things.
The safety of our children it's a no-brainer, isn't it? So if we can make some improvements there, it's
Councillor Cooper?
Lovely to have the opportunity to talk to you, Marty. Thank you very much. I'm not sure if you were in when Bev Woods did her presentation about the sand dunes out of the Bream Bay area.
Yes, I heard it. Yes.
I can tell you that we had many meetings about that and all the way along Ruakaka village as well, and that it is concerning many people, and they tend to be elderly people who care about the environment, and they try to do their best to ask people to respect the rules, and it is leading to many instances of confrontation, including people being chased with bits of wood and that sort of thing. Now, we've met with the police out at Ruakaka and DOC and the Northern Regional Council to try to come up with a plan. The answers that we're getting is that it's not a high enough priority because of the staffing levels, and other things that are going on. There is real concern in the community that it's going to escalate and someone will be hurt, and that, we really need to address it. Can you help us in some way, please, and give us some comfort that something can be done?
Absolutely. So the first thing is staffing levels. Is always a topic of conversation with demand, but in this case I don't think it is. I think we've got plenty of staff right through Ruakaka. We had a number of other groups, other policing groups that work from station that spend most of their days out there. We've got more police on the road than we've ever had with the P21 resource. I know of some of the issues you speak of. I know some of the individual cases. I can recall some quite distinct detail about some of the specifics of those incidents, and I'll just say that there is some conflict there between some very dedicated people and some other people who think their rights to go on the beach and do whatever they want to do are being impugned. So you're always going to get some discursive behaviour in there. I welcome you to contact me. I'll take your number now if you want, and we'll have a chat, and I'll get some people to respond to your concerns.
I'll give you my number. It's not streamed, so I don't get a hold of calls. Thank you.
Councillor Cooper. Councillor Cocorello.
No, look, we've recently had in our community development report it reported on City Safe saying that there was a high level of drunk and disorderly behaviour within the CBD, and it was increasing. Are you finding the same issues?
Yeah, so COVID really shut down everything, particularly in March, so everything dropped off the radar, crime went through the floor. Not wanting COVID to stay, but you know, we were in a real good space in terms of our overall crime. Alcohol crime obviously dropped off with bars being closed in bits and pieces, and it has sprung up a bit. It's come back to just less the levels than it was before COVID. So look, there's a lot we can do in our doing. We've got a number of new bars and bar owners in town. We're working with the council in partnership to make sure that they operate their businesses within the guidelines. Look, the CBD will continue to attract young people, different bars and things, and we want to stop that. There's a lot we can do to keep it safe. And our area prevention manager, Cindy Sergeant Christenstein, does a wonderful job here, keeping everyone honest. Our alcohol harm reduction officer is also fairly engaged in that space, and we're putting up more staff on the busy nights. But there's no need for alarm here. Those levels are not from years gone by. We had a call coming here many times to talk about different crime prevention strategies we can do to make the city safe, and go palmer behind them in just keeping talking to the council about crime prevention through environmental design, lighting. There's always room for improvement there, just to keep everyone safe and make the place safer. And I think it's heading in a good direction. So I don't want to be alarmist because there is no alarm.
Marty, you've also talked about, and Councillor Benning's brought up about other aspects of the city. In relation to City Safe and our safe communities, parkings and things like that, do you find that as a great resource or a useful resource for the police?
Oh, absolutely. Look, I can compare you, I can show you 100 graphs and bits and pieces from the past about the crime that was prevalent in the car parks and bits and pieces. That's all but gone now. You don't get the volume, even near the volume. It's quite a rare occurrence versus a common place. It's working very, very well. Long may it keep going.
Thank you.
Councillor Martin and Councillor Murphy.
Yeah, have we had an appointment for Hickory yet? Just we had a meeting on Tuesday night, yeah, Russell and everyone were there, because that rapport between the local person, like we used to have with somebody, and Russell was outstanding, and he could just feed stuff to them, so.
Well, the previous Hickory policeman left a huge hole, of course.
Never been for that. Never been for that.
That could never be replaced.
Was that important?
Yeah, Russell. So, very much a work in progress for us. We will advertise that very shortly. So Pete's hopping those shoes, and he's very, very popular in the community there. I get a sense that he's filling those shoes very, very well. Just got it's how we advertise it. There's a police house there, that's a piece associated with the position. Yeah. So we've got two very, very good officers up there at the moment. We like the feedback on the is they're doing a great job. Yeah. Just got to fill it and put it in concrete right here. We're working on it.
Councillor Murphy.
Hi Martin, I'm Anna Murphy from out Nongaroo to the Coast Coastway. And yeah, nice to meet you. I'm just, because of our budget cuts, we usually run our Summer Safe Car Park program, which is really effective in car parks like Whale Bay, City Caves and so on. And I'm not sure if you're aware that because of the budget cuts, that program won't be happening this summer, I believe. And I'm just wondering if, to put it under your radar and just see whether, especially in the coastal areas, whether the police might be able to do some extra cruises out just to let people know that you're on the roads and watching.
Absolutely. Every summer we analyse the last 3 years' crime and demand. So not just crime but demand. So that could be a range of the minor stuff at the bottom of the crime spectrum, and we have an operation surf sea and sand where we take extra officers and put them actually at the beach over the holiday period, so it's 5 weeks. So I'll talk to you after that and give you the name of the person that you speak to. And if you've got some concerns about coverage, we can actually give you some reassurance and we can plan. But you'll be quite surprised how small the demand is. It's not the perception that people have bonfires, and that's years of crime prevention through environmental design, the alcohol ban, fires on the beaches, bits and pieces, all that stuff has killed a lot of that disorder and bits and pieces. But yes, you're right, it'd be nice to see some police there, and we do plan for that.
Yeah, cool. No, it's just more those car parks because people do target them, and having the summer safe ambassadors there really works well. So I think this summer might change. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for the area commander? Councillor Peters.
I'm Carol Peters, and I want to thank you and your team for the support that they've given to Open Arms over the last few years. And I also want to ask, from our side, it's been really supportive, if there's any change that you require from your side.
No, not that I'm aware of. No, it's, I think we're doing everything we can in that space.
Thank you. Although there is still that concern of the community for some of the areas mentioned. Any further questions? Marty, can I just on behalf of our community thank you for the work that you and your team put in through the COVID lockdown, keeping our community safe. It was really noticeable the increase in partnership model that has developed as a result of that. So looking ahead, the challenges that are faced because of some of the changes in our community. So it's really good to know that you can come and present to us about the initiatives that are coming, and for us to be able to challenge you with some of the things that we are hearing. I'll make sure that we pass on the contact details of the councillors who have given you specific requests. I'll get Elsa to do that. But also, if you don't mind, I'll give your details to all of them. So look out, there's going to be lots of calls. But yeah, thank you to you and the team.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the privilege of coming in. Talk to you. It's enjoyable. It's always good to sit there.
John Beck. We have a recommendation on page 120 of our agenda that we receive that report.
I'll move it.
Note the report having come. Councillor Popperillo is moving and Councillor Benny is seconding. I'll put that motion. Those in favour, aye. Aye. Against, carried. So now we'll move back to item 5.1, the minutes of our Whangarei District Council meeting held on the 23rd of July. It's page 5 of our, 6, sorry, of our agenda. Can I have somebody move that they are a true and correct record of the proceedings of the meeting?
Yeah.
Councillor Martin is moving, Councillor Peters is seconding. Are there any amendments or corrections required to those minutes? I'll put that motion. Those in favour, aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Item 5.2, page 14, the minutes of our extraordinary council meeting held on Thursday the 14th of August. Can I say somebody moved that they are through the correct record? Councillor Cutfield has moved, Councillor Connell has seconded. Any corrections required? You'll note, of course, that we've, subsequent to that meeting, had our forensic AGM with some interesting results. I'll put that motion. Those in favour, aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Item number 6.1, staff delegations under the endorsement of Act 1991. Gosh, that seems like a long time ago. With the recommendations on page 18. Do I have somebody move the recommendations? Councillor Murphy is moving and Councillor Innes is seconding. Any discussion? Councillor Murphy.
Oh, yes, well, it makes a lot of sense that staff can carry on with the necessary meetings via audio visual link, so I think it makes sense. It's a good recommendation.
Any further discussion? I'll put that motion. Those in favour, aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Item 6.2, Three Waters Reform Memorandum of Understanding application. Councillor Innes has got his hand up. Councillor Innes.
Thank you. I'd like to move the recommendation that we have in front of us with an adjustment in 2. So I'll just read that out. Authorise the Chief Executive to enter into the funding agreement and delivery plan. So that's an addition, and the remainder of that sentence remains the same. So, and delivery plan. Thank you.
I will very happily second that recommendation, that motion. Thank you, Councillor Innes.
Thank you, Your Worship. We look at Three Waters reform, and it's something that we probably need to put it in context. In that context, I feel is significant. I look at Councillor Hulse, 30 years, Councillor Hulse, you've been on council. Yeah. I would suggest that this would be probably the most significant change that we'll see in terms of local government reform in the last 30 years. It is an endeavour really to look at regionalisation. What I would like to ensure that when we look at these reforms, that we really want to make sure that we keep local and local government. Localism is a crucial part of local government, and it's something that we have to hold on to. So when we look at regionalisation, we've seen the central government look towards the water regulator. It looks at regionalising government departments to align with local government. It starts to look at local government in terms of infrastructure, in terms of regional and inter-regional models. So for us, that means looking at Auckland, the prospect of Auckland becoming very much part of our service delivery in terms of water reform. It's crucially important for us to be able to keep local very much in that discussion and ensure that when we look at this reform that we're very much at the front. To do that, we need to participate. So in moving this recommendation, it's one that we sign a memorandum of understanding that gives us a level of funding and that funding in terms of our district and also for the region as it relates to us is around $11 million. Part of that, and I'm pleased to see in the report from our General Manager Infrastructure that it has been itemised in terms of where that funding would go. But what I'm pleased to see is that there's 2 projects related to this reform, and that really will enable us to have discussions on the most effective model that we can encourage through these reforms. And part of that is also communicating with and working alongside HAPU in terms of saying, as we go forward in terms of water reform, we very much stand beside HAPU and Māori in terms of looking at going forward. So I see that as we move through this, I would also want to ensure that there's a governance component in any investigation. So it's not just seen as a technical exercise, it's also seen as an exercise that actually involves us as councillors and particularly looking at a steering committee to be involved with that. As I see that it's really that discussion that we need to have is really towards ensuring that we have local transparency and accountability in any model that actually is put forward. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Innes. Councillors, I will be supporting the recommendations. Today we have 2 options. One is to do nothing, to continue to manage our waters in the very efficient, I have to say, way that we have in the past. But that will deny us the ability to tap into this government fund. We, by agreeing to the Memorandum of Understanding in Tranche 1, it doesn't bind us to any future work through Tranche 2, but it does give us availability to this fund. And I commend the work that our manager has done on looking at the draft program of works, and also looking at how the program would be prioritised, and the links with our priority areas, and also the improvement of our waters assets. I am proud of where we're at. We are not in a similar situation to Havelock North. We don't have any problems with, we always meet the very high standards of water quality, particularly drinking water, but we do have issues across our wastewater, stormwater and water infrastructure that need to be addressed. And I'm pleased to note, to think that if we support this today, we have some additional investment that we can make into the programs that were already scheduled. The addition, of course, is looking into the options for governance and management of our assets. We must be around that table to safeguard the significant investment that our ratepayers have made into these assets over the years. If we choose not to take part in this tranche of funding, we also won't be taking part in the discussions around where to from here. Councillor Innes has talked about the option. The government is definitely driving this to have large aggregated water entities. Whether we like it or not, we have to be part of that discussion. So I think it's really important today that we do enter into the MOU. We are looking at remembering that this is about local government's network of infrastructure. It's not about the private supply, but there is a small amount of funding in there to look at marae funding and other private supplies, and I think that is our obligation as well, to also look at that as part of the work, the ongoing work. It is important also to recognise today that we cannot adjust any of the wording of either the Memorandum of Understanding or the funding agreement or etc. So we have no option but to sign up to what has been written, and you would have read through them, and whether or not you wanted to change them today, there is no option. We also need to be mindful of the fact that should this go through today, we've got a large amount of work to be done. We have that capacity and capability of our contracting force, which we're already stretched to the max. We've got a large capital works program, and we will, through our long-term plan, have to look at adjusting that should this go through today. We've got some future decisions to be made on that as well. Should this proceed today, we are giving the authority to the Chief Executive to enter into the funding agreement and the delivery plan. I was pleased to see that amendment, because that is important that we give that authority today to both of those aspects of it. And the last part of the recommendation that I need to draw our attention to is that signing the MOU does not obligate us to continue participation beyond the term of the Memorandum of Understanding. It is important for us to recognise that, and today to make the most of this tranche of funding to invest into this important aspect of our infrastructure. So I will open up further debate. Councillor Peters.
I support this move, this recommendation, and specifically because we are in uncertain, changing climate times. We don't know what's coming up, and we really need to be part of the conversation. I also am very concerned and nervous about keeping things local. So how we balance that out is what we can explore at the table over the next year as we are drawing this out. I'm also very much in favour of it because it also includes something to deal with private water supplies, because those water supplies are going to have to meet new standards which will cost them money. And so being in a position to support those is actually really important. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Peters. Councillor Cooper.
It's a question, Your Worship. I'm just wondering, have we assessed this on a risk basis? And if so, if I can't find it, if not, when would we? And do we think it's important to do this?
Simon, I'll pass the question.
The MOU is a non-binding MOU, so I don't see any risk associated with signing this. The only challenges we have are to make sure that we fulfil our obligations with the projects that we put forward in the funding agreement and the delivery plan. In that regard, I'm intending on bringing forward a workshop on the 10th of September, an updated delivery plan with additional information as to how we would deliver those projects.
May I follow that, please? Thank you, Simon. It seems to me that if we inject $11 million, because these are shovel-ready projects, and if we sign up today, we're committing to having them done in the near future, next sort of 12 to 18 months, would have a significant impact on the annual plan, which we've already agreed to. And I can't help thinking that some time should be spent before we make the recommendation, which coincidentally I do support the recommendation. We need to be part of it. I'd like to speak to that in a minute. But I cannot help but raise, if I feel concerned, my concern around the fact that we have not assessed this risk. And that's just one area of risk that we're
Sorry, Simon.
If I may, the financial agreement and the delivery plan is to be provided at the end of September, 30th of September. So even signing the MOU today, Council can decide that it doesn't want to apply for any funding. However, it would sign the MOU, so it will still be at the table with discussions in the water space.
I think that might be the best way to put it, an interesting way to look at it.
Do you wish to speak, Councillor Cooper?
Well, yes, thank you, since you've given me the opportunity. I will now speak to the motion. I do support it because I feel, like other members have said already, that it's important to be around the table. However, after some ongoing discussions with Malcolm Alexander that I've been having, it is not a given that we have to, in the end, sign up for this. And indeed, there are other councils that are not, or that are at this stage signalling that they may not sign up to the Three Waters Agreement. So while I accept going into level 1, like Councillor Peters over there and Councillor Innes has said, the option of keeping our ratepayers' assets and the work that we've done, and we should acknowledge the work of previous councils, which I happily sit here and say I had nothing to do with. The standard of our water is great. And I guess just one final question for Simon would be, there is the new regulatory body being proposed. If those conditions were that the regulatory body is going to impose on the water systems, would we meet them at this stage as a council?
In terms of drinking water, yes, I believe that we certainly would. We are still waiting for the national standards in regards to wastewater, and I will inform you when I finally see those standards.
Okay, so thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cooper. Councillor Cockerello?
Yeah, through you, Madam Chair, it's more a clarification question. I just need to make it very, very clear so we can actually hear the exact answer to this. Is there, with signing up to the MOU, is there any catch or clause which is then required on council?
Simon?
This is a non-binding agreement, so it's up to council as to how they interact with government, the other councils involved. I have asked the Department of Internal Affairs how we would interact with other local authorities, particularly those south, and it is likely that they will provide the forum for that. So I don't see any issues with this particular agreement.
So follow-on question.
It's up to council to decide how it wishes to operate on signing.
So follow-on question to that. Is this then just free money?
Yes.
No.
Simon?
It isn't free money in that it does put the onus on council to engage with government on an open and fair basis, and to also be mindful and observe the 7 obligations outlined in the papers, and also the 3 entity requirements as outlined in the papers for discussion. So this is a goodwill document that you're signing, that you will work with government over this particular.
Did you wish to speak, Councillor Cockerello?
I'll come back to that later. I'm asking my questions first.
Councillor Reid?
Thank you, Your Worship. Through the Chair, I'd like to speak for the motion. We need to follow this through. This gives us a leg for funding. It gives us room to plan and consider our next move to try and keep our control in the north rather than letting it go to Waste Park Water Care in Auckland. And to not do this would be a disservice to our residents and ratepayers, and they're the very people we're here to serve and protect. And it's their investment, not just ours.
Thank you, Councillor Reid. Councillor Golightly?
Thank you, Your Worship. Just following on from Councillor Cockerello there, the initial stage of this I support, but reluctantly, obviously. So there's just a few sort of statements in this initial document. I mean, one, we've got a non-binding agreement. We're then going to accept a grant, which Councillor Coccarello stated as maybe free money, so that was sort of in my head. So if we then do not commit to then going ahead, what happens with that money?
That is a grant. It's a free grant, so to speak, to council. So you've taken that money, and at the end of that, you can decide not to participate any further with the Three Waters report.
So it technically is free money.
After pointing out the obligations that you're signing up to be a willing participant in negotiation.
I guess you could just describe it as money that would otherwise have come from our ratepayers. It's coming from taxpayers. So it's still investing into the assets, which of course include depreciation and ongoing maintenance of those assets.
Yes, of course. Thank you.
In accordance with the asset management plans.
Thank you. Thanks, Simon.
Councillor Murphy?
Yeah, I support the recommendation. I think we definitely need to be at the table. And a lot of it has to do with what Councillor Peters said. The future is actually unknown, and I know that this is, we're mostly thinking about drinking water, but actually with climate change, our wastewater and stormwater systems could cause councils some mega expense in the future. What gives me comfort is the way the recommendations are written. It's really clear that we are participating in good faith in the conversations. For me, it's actually not about the funding at all. The funding is really secondary. But for me, the most important thing when you read the memorandum of understanding, it makes it clear that the regulatory mechanisms are not going to solve the whole country's problems. And we're lucky, our local council, we've done a good job, we're in a good space at the moment. But we have to think in a bigger picture. We can't, we're here to represent our ratepayers, but we have to also see into the future. I really agree. The following objectives, which are in the memorandum of understanding, I think are very positive and very clear, and I support all of those strongly. And what also gives me comfort is that over the page on page 31, the government also states that the following fundamental requirements and safeguards must be included, and that's a mechanism that provides for continued public ownership of water service delivery infrastructure and protect against privatisation, and mechanisms that provide for the exercise of ownership rights in water services. And then it also goes on to state that, that with government, local council, we can work together to make sure, that there are mechanisms for enabling communities to provide input into the new entity, like Councillor Innes said. We have to keep that local, stand up strongly for local voice and local input. And then the other thing which I really support in the Memorandum of Understanding is that we recognise the rights and interests of Untitled or Waitangi. So I think that gives Māori a great opportunity to kind of really come to the table in a governance way, look into the future. So I support us signing this at this time.
Councillor Murphy. Councillor Cutforth.
Thank you, Worship. I agree somewhat slightly reluctantly that we do have to be at the table. I think Whangarei District Council is one of the better councils in terms of how we've managed our water asset, particularly our drinking water. And I guess I have some residual concern that that we may be in a better position than others, and what the implications of that might be. But having said that, I think we do definitely need to be there, and I echo what Councillor Reid said in terms of being there to represent our district and in fact our region
in the debate we may have in terms of greater amalgamation. And I think that we need to be there to be an advocate really for our region. Yeah, I'm a bit sort of anxious about non-binding agreements that require a lot of money. And I guess I'd be interested in Simon's comments related to Councillor Cooper's question regarding how indeed, what impact will this have on our annual plan, and how in fact will we spend this money and the time available given all the other projects we have. So I'd be interested in Simon's comments on that if that's possible. Thank you.
Simon.
With all the other government funding and our annual plan projects, it's a very busy civils industry. At this point in time, we are working on not only the priority of the projects, but also how we will deliver those projects so that there isn't an interruption to our normal projects within the annual plan. I think that it will put pressure on the industry, and as a result of that we may see some changes. I think that's only reasonable to suggest. I'm hoping to be able to mitigate most of those issues through alternative forms of engagement, possibly with these particular projects that we're working through at the moment, and I'll be able to provide more information hopefully on that on the 10th.
Okay, thank you.
Further debate. Councillor Holmes.
This is a very unusual agenda item because we've never been offered a gift of that sort of money. When you offer just under $6 million and people think that it's non-binding, think again. It's totally binding because perception's there, the intent's there that we'll carry on. It's unitary authority driven. This is all about driving us into unitary authority. And the whole recommendation here does not contain the word governance in it. I'm very disappointed that this is probably the biggest political change we've had since I've been a councillor, as Councillor Innes pointed out. You know, a huge political change. We've already seen all our roading going to a North and White Alliance. So all our roading projects have been taken off the decision of us councillors around the room.
Councillor Holmes, I will caution you that that is an incorrect statement. We as a local authority have total control over the spending for our roading infrastructure.
Okay, so we have total control of the budget, but most of the projects are signed off by delegated authority. So I'll correct it. So this is the start of subsidies, and the Whangarei District Council has done extremely well over the water supplies. We are very, very fortunate. We've got a staff member like Simon Weston, who was our water services manager. Actually, Simon was involved before we built the Wilson Dam in Ruakaka. So he's been here a long time. He knows Northern very well. The Whangarei District Council, we're just finishing off a new water treatment plant for over $30 million. We've got a water supply that went through the biggest, probably longest drought we've had this year. We still had a surplus of water. We still never ran out, and we still had options. The councillors around this table have looked after the water part of this council extremely well. When you look at the other councils in Northern, we all know they're in dire need of upgrades in their water supplies and other water things such as sewage lines, etc. This could well be the start of cross subsidies across Northern, hence why the money has been floated in here by the government. $14 million for the rest for Northern, $6 million for Whangarei District Council, $20 million that no one really asked for. We didn't go to Wellington to ask for this, and we're the political people around here. We're the invisible 13. You know, Jacinda says a team of 5 million, but we're the invisible 13 because we haven't had a voice as a government challenging any of this until today. It's just about a done deal. It's just about a done deal now. It's very disappointing that we haven't engaged earlier on this. Our Deputy Mayor has done a great job of keeping us informed what's going on to Wellington when he's been down there. He said this is likely to happen, this is coming. And yet today is the first time And if we don't make the decision today, we lose the opportunity. And we're the politicians, and we're going to lie over and accept this. There's a lot of good things that we're having a good think about with reforms, but it's the way it's done. So we in essence are saying, yes, we'll take the money, and can you imagine that we aren't going to keep going with it? If we take $6 million off the government and we don't follow through, the next government will say, well, we're involved, we'll cut the funding. That's how it works. Don't be so naive to think that won't happen. So we're driven down a path where our political voice in Northland has been very quiet. You know, we had a good workshop when we'd Brian Haniff, who was Mayor of Oklahoma, came up and went around the country. Good workshop, but there's no answers in his presentation. We went along there, and it's a presentation again. No answers. But I'll say again, if we vote for this today, and I said there are some good things in it, but as political people, I think we've let our communities down because we haven't engaged with our community. There's nothing in here about our engagement with the public because we haven't done it. Our primary role is to represent our people, and I'll continue to do that. So it's very disappointing. I'll say once again that we haven't had that political input into this recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hobbs. Councillor Martin.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of the speakers. We need to try and keep it in the north as much as we can because the tyranny of distance, if it's 5 hours drive from Auckland to the far north, that's going to be an issue. And will they have the appetite to go up there and fix a little problem for 10 different suppliers? But we have to be at the table on this. If we don't go there, and if we're not involved in discussing this, and put strongly our point of view, how we need to keep it in the north, as opposed to joining up with Auckland, who even have trouble flushing their own toilets. So do we want them running our water supplies up here? So we need to go and make sure that we're involved. The government can legislate. They could have legislated to do this without anything, without any funding, without any consultation, without even discussing the matter. And so I think at least this way we're going to be there, we're going to be able to put all our angles and all of the problems that we have. And if we don't sign up to this, we're not going to get this cash injection. Next month they're going to find all of the projects that are already in our plan that we can go ahead that is made shovel ready, which means we've been planning for these projects anyway, but we're just not going to have to pay for them if there's this fund. So it's just a no-brainer to sign up to this today.
Could I have a question? Thank you, Councillor Martin. Councillor Murphy, a question?
On page 63 of the Subson Grierson, the Subson Grierson thing, they do say if councils enter into the MOU, they may want to consult subsequently on whether to continue to support of the reform in the LTP. So I was just wondering through the chair whether that would be a recommendation that we would include consultation on this matter. Says about whether to continue the participation in tranche 2.
I'll ask our Chief Executive just to respond to that.
Through you, Madam Chair, there's a lot of work going on at the moment from Solgum and local government New Zealand about how this will affect LTPs. I have absolutely no doubt that it's going to be an issue because the government sits to its time frame in year 4. The water will be out of councils, so that's the situation. So it will be part of our LTPs. Just exactly how it's consulted on, I'm not sure.
Yeah. Thank you, question. Any further debate? Councillor Cockerello?
Yeah, Madam Chair, I just need a clarification question again. It was stated before about Hapu and Iwi been having the say, but at this point I don't remember any discussions that Hapu had actually had in this. Could you probably highlight that?
My immediate response is that they're around the table with the Four Waters Advisory Group, but there may be some additional aspects that Simon has.
I certainly know that through all the cabinet papers that we've seen today, there's a strong drive to involve iwi and to uphold the obligations of the treaty. So they will certainly be working with iwi in this space.
Madam Chair, the presentation that we had here, Hapu were invited but none attend, is that correct?
That is correct.
The steering group presentation.
Yeah, through you, Madam Chair, the one you're referring to is the one at Seminole Stadium. Yeah, so we invited Hapu, no one did attend, and some others in other parts of the country there was quite strong attendance. There wasn't a lot of notice to that, so I suspect that there would have been clashes and things like that that came through, so I wouldn't take anything from that. The government is keen to involve them. Is probably a bit behind the 8 ball at the moment. We have a lot of catch up to do in the next 12 months, I would say.
So, through Madam Chair, signing an MOU now without Hapu on board, is this the correct process to take?
The MOU is between our council and the Crown. Any further debate? Councillor Ernst, did you want to write it down?
Yes, thank you. Just to reflect, I suppose, in terms of the discussion. So shovel-ready projects have come under the Free Water Reform, and in doing that it has provided a level of incentive. But I really pick up what Simon is commenting on. It needs to be looked at how it integrates with our existing programs, and we've got time to do that until the 30th of September. It's logical that we have to be around the table, and part of really being around that table is ensuring that, as I mentioned before, that we keep local, very much localism in these discussions. We need to be part of the change, and going forward, just to comment really on Councillor Hulse's comment, I think, Councillor Hulse, this is the start of discussion, and I think with the investigation that we're going to undertake as part of this, looking at the options involving Māori in those discussions, this is where governance starts, and this is where we need to be very much part of those discussions. And I put that out there because it's not just a technical exercise, it's one where we have to be around that table and we have to be looking at this option. Of course, the other side of this is saying, well, what is left? So if we look at Northern, if we look at Whangarei District, if we take the waters out of local government and it's placed in another entity, hopefully within Northern, but we need to consider what is left. And that needs to be part of the discussion. I'm not going to make a pre-judgment on what could be left. I've got a fair idea, but I'll leave that to the investigation. So the other side of this is there's no obligation to go further. Let's use it, let's be part of change, let's influence change. My experience has always been, and I've been involved with a lot of change in government, is one that you need to be part of it, not fight it. You need to steer it, you need to understand that we are there to serve our residents and we need their voice, and it needs to be local, and we cannot take local out of local government going forward. Thank you.
The right of reply has been had.
Division, please.
Councillor Martin's called for division. Those in favour, please raise your hand.
Councillors Peters, Cockerillo, Connor, Pulse, Reid, Innes, Martin, Murphy, Golightly, Cutforth, Benny, Cooper, Deeming, who worship the Mayor.
It's carried unanimously. Brings us to item 6.3, election in 2022, choice of election I actually, because I was looking this way, I had seen Councillor Cutfield on the feet first, Councillor Cotterill, I apologise, but Councillor Cutfield is on the feet.
Gosh, I'm glad I could trip over my chair that time. Hey, I wish to move the recommendation 1B that this council, pursuant to section 27 of the Local Electoral Act 2001, resolves to change the single transferable voting electoral system for the 2022 and 2025 triennial elections. Thank you.
Do I have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Peters is seconding. Councillor Cutfield.
Thank you, Worship. Just about to channel Councillor Innes. I thought I wasn't going to start like this, but since it was such a good line, I thought I'll just channel Councillor Innes, my mentor and tormentor, who said, when we were just as he spoke before, as he was summing up, he said, in terms of change, it's better to be part of it than to fight it. And I thought that was just it was actually a really good line, and that's why I really would like this council this time to actually move to a proportional representation system where basically everybody's vote counts when they vote in the council elections. And I think that's the fundamental reason for a move to a single transferable voting system. People will say that FPP, first past the post, the system we have, is an easy to understand system. I think if you're a young person, and I don't actually categorise myself in that any longer, though, regrettably, but for young people these days, they don't actually find FPP a very easy to understand system. They understand a system which allows your vote to be counted in a preferential way better than a system that if your candidate doesn't win, your vote is wasted. And so with a first past the post system, you have one shot, basically. You put a tick by the name of the candidate you're voting for. The candidate with the most, or candidates, the candidates with the most votes win, and every other vote is effectively wasted. With a single transferable vote system, you have the option of ranking. And just so Councillor Golightly understands it completely, it's as simple as 1, 2, I've already said this too, sorry. It's as simple as 1, 2, 3. It's a preferential system. You rank your candidates according to your preference, and you can continue ranking them forever and ever if you like, because the more candidates you rank, the less likely your vote is to be wasted. So it's a much better way of avoiding waste than a first past the post system. We have 78 local authorities, committees or councils around in the country, and of them at the moment about 11, or 11 I think were in the 2019 elections using that system. Tauranga City Council used it for the first time, New Plymouth City District Council used it for the first time, and Ruapehu, which is a smaller council. But if you look at the list of councils that are using a preferential system, it is generally the larger councils, of which Whangarei now is part of. Tauranga, New Plymouth, Palmerston North, Wellington, Dunedin are the larger councils. And up here, Kaipara, a little council, has used it for some time, and we've now had, just in the last few months, Farnham's District Council vote for it unanimously, and we also have Hamilton City Council who has moved to a 1, 2, 3 voting system, if you like, for the next elections. So I think it is like being part of the change rather than being against the change. I think the two things for the STV system that I really like, and I've thought about this a great deal, it's not something I've sort of suddenly come to, I've really thought it through, and I thought it through a lot with MMP earlier too, in terms of moving to an MMP system. The two things that are really, really good about it is, one, from a voter's point of view, it encourages a wider range of and a more diverse group of people to vote, I think, because they feel that their vote truly does count. And that for younger people, people from different minority groups, really feel that their vote will count, because they have the opportunity to rank people rather than just see that one or two or three people who normally get in will get in because there's a different system of voting. And I think we all know that often the fact that you've been in for a long time, the fact that your name is known in the community, those are often reasons why people are more likely to be elected. With an STV system, it takes that sort of bias, if you like, away. So for voters, I think it's good. And then for us around here, I think the fact that it offers the opportunity to have a much wider group of representation and a much more diverse group around the table. And I think those are two things that we're needing, that we want to encourage, and we want to see both more participation and we want to see a more representative group around this table. So, councillors, I'd really like you to think this time really carefully about it and move with the times, really. Don't stand in the way of change, but be part of the change this time. So thank you.
I've been thinking about this word to move a point of order. I'm just trying to understand, and I need to put it through your guidance here. The councillor who's made this promotion, this motion has basically already determined on social media, stating that she's had a preference and this is the direction that she's been advocating. So isn't it a predetermination?
I would say that as elected members, we often have a position on various things that we come with. The most important criteria for us all is to come with an open mind when we're deciding on the day. I think I understand your question, and it is something that we all need to be aware of. And I'm sure that councillors have been guided in this through our induction, and probably even around this very issue would have been spoken to by our democracy teams. But I do think it is normal for us to have positions on and advocate for things that council deals with. But the most important thing is that people come with an open mind. So I'll be checking with Councillor Cutforth that she has an open mind on this, as I hope you will. So yeah, in moving it, she's indicated a preference for a voting system. It's within her rights to do so. Given that you were on your feet, are you going to be moving an amendment? I'm just checking if there's any foreshadowing of an amendment.
Yeah, Your Worship, I'll move an amendment that we actually retain the first past the post electoral system. A.
So Councillor Cockerillo is moving an amendment that Council, pursuant to section 27, resolves to retain the first past the post. Do you have a seconder? Councillor Deeming the seconder. Councillor Cockerillo.
Madam Chair, what I think we need to really focus on at this present time is there is a lot of confusion out there. As someone who has been voted onto both by STV and by FPP, I can say that if we really want to have the public on our side right at this present moment in time, and over the next few very confusing years for businesses and the public, we need to keep things as simple and easy as possible. In discussions with the people in the public, I did a survey with businesses this morning, and I asked them which way they would prefer to go. Out of the 30 people, 2 said STV, the rest said FPP. So it was a very clear indication to me that amongst the people who are actually voting amongst our community, who actually want their voice to be heard and believe their voice is being heard, FPP is their option of choice. So right now, while I move the amendment to say that we should be sticking with FPP, it is about simplicity, easy, and reliability on the results. There's also what the previous councillor has missed out to say is there is a very, very high percentages of null votes when it comes to STV, because there is a very strong misunderstanding of actually how the system works. So that's why I do propose the amendment to retain the first past the post electoral system, or number point A on the motion.
Councillors.
So just a question from me. So the report from Mr. Ofsosky, goes on about the male representation. I take it we will be getting that coming back to us because I've seen.
Correct.
So,
Today's around the choice of electoral system.
Yeah.
We are not, Māori Awards are included, we've got till November this year to
which is not far away. Okay, no, just.
Councillor Joe Lightly.
Thank you, Your Worship. I suppose I just want to make a little bit of a statement, and after hearing Councillor Cocoraro and Councillor Cupforth, and I disagree with Councillor Cupforth saying that a vote is wasted. And I know there is a lot of talk out there about the diversity in council, and I don't believe a voting system changes the diversity. I believe that people standing for, our constituents standing for election creates diversity. So I have thought about this for many months about changing the system, and I just can't agree to change the system because I don't believe this system in this current state is broken. I just think it's the diversity that standing for election needs changing, not this.
Thank you, Councillor Golightly. Councillor Deeming.
Thank you, Your Worship. I will be supporting the amendment. Change for the sake of change has never been a mantra that I have supported, and I think our public have recently had so much change, forcing more upon them, which is what we would do, when we have not had any major approaches from the community toward changing the voting system. Granted, there has been quite a lot of promotion of the change on social media, and I certainly would not have indulged in putting my opinion on a topic like this quite so blatantly. I would have asked the public what their opinion was rather than presenting mine, because I feel I've given this a lot of consideration over a period of time, each time this has come up while I've been in council, and I still have not been able to see a good reason for changing a system that people understand, appear to be basically satisfied with. Granted, there are always those who want change, whether it's a change safe or because they see it as a new, innovative way forward. But at this point, I would certainly continue with the first past the post system.
Thank you, Councillor Deeming. Councillor Peters.
Yeah, I've thought quite a lot about this too, and I take Councillor Cockerell's point. One of the things, though, that he brought up, this is about the point about clarity. I do think that sort of also was interested if he had any statistics around wasted votes in first past the post, and maybe he can come back with that. But another thing he brought up was that the people that he talked to over the last week were the people who voted and were likely to vote. But I'm also interested in the people who didn't vote and were unlikely to vote because they thought their voice was not going to be heard. And so that's my, I've come to the position, although I considered both quite deeply, that we actually do need to take single transferable vote so that proportional voting can bring more people into the voting arena.
Thank you, Councillor Peters. Councillor Connor.
Thank you very much, and I will speak up because I've been told to before in the past as well. This is one of those things where, in essence, we all have a bias. We've all got our own opinions, and we do have to make choices depending on what's the public wanting to say. Now, I personally have been one of those people that I said I'm supportive of STB, just as Councillor Cupforth has raised this one in this point here, just as Councillor Cockerello has raised the first past the post point. So in essence, in a manner of speaking, they've both predetermined what they want to do. So at the same point, we had the agenda to be able to read it prior to being able to my posting of that information. So and at the same time, I'm open to either of the options. I'm not this one, and I'm not this one. I'm open. And if the public wanted to raise a poll, there is that option as well. Regardless of which choice we make now, the public can, if there's, I think it's about 3,000 people raise the point, they can inflict another cost onto everybody about asking this. Now, with the points that have been raised about the fact that people, my vote won't count, and my vote's wasted, that to me says that they're wanting one of the smaller parties that has a difference of opinion from the big ones. Now, we have our main kind of idea, and obviously we're more wider spread, but you can see those opinions when we get other people saying, oh, it's just a greenie opinion, or it's just a business opinion. We're all in this together. We all have to make this work, and we have to work together to be able to get this through. And in the past, I've supported STV myself, and in the past, other people have supported these things as well. And at the same time, we have to work with what we have. And once again, with the first past the post versus the STV, if you only want to vote once, you can. There you go, there's your 1 point. But if you have STV, you have that option to say, okay, well, I want that person first. Yep, I'll have those other people as options. But at the same time, that also doesn't quite work with the ward system that we have too. Because there are people out there that maybe live out toward Nunguru, but they're in the Whangarei Heads ward. And they're like, well, and no offense to Councillor Ernest, he doesn't represent me. I'm a young woman. I don't feel connected to him. Hey, you call me who you want to be. But I'm voicing public right now. I'm voicing this person that they've said to me. Now, she said that, and I've grown to understand and know more about all the councillors that we have here. And I'm very grateful for all of their experiences. But when somebody out there says, I don't feel like this person represents me, I'm taking that on board as the fact that that demographic, be it race, be it sex, be it orientation, whatever it is, needs to have some option to be able to work. So making sure that people can have that voice, the ones that are in the lower areas, or they don't feel like they can actually make a chance. Their voice is unheard because their vote is wasted, because these ones got the votes without being trickled down and have that other option of being able to be shuffled. It does support them more, and really, it's too hard. It's too hard. Well, no, it's education, just like rubbish. If we don't think about what we do, we're not taking an interest in what we do. Me standing up for council, coming into this, is me being active and me trying my best. And there's so much that I care about this place, and I want to do my best. Like even through the voting process, the only one I vocally supported was Shaquille Shortland. He's a young Maori man who's doing bloody great stuff. And nothing against the other councillors, they're wonderful, but he's the one I vocally supported. Because of the need for diversity, because of the need for Maori representation. And as much as we don't have, well, there is representation here. When you look at the colour of the place, we are all quite white. There's a bit of colour and stuff, and we do have our cares, and we do. But when somebody looks in and says, "Who's supporting me?" Well, I think we need to be able to make a change to be able to do this. So.
Worship, Councillor Conniff made a comment to say that I'm predetermined. I actually made a statement to say that I'd asked a question this morning to business people. There was no predetermination in there at all.
Yes, Councillor Conniff, you did state that there was predetermination, and I accept Councillor Cockburlow's challenge to you on that, because both the councillors you mentioned are coming to this decision with an open mind. I hope. Councillor Innes.
Thank you. It's a challenge, isn't it? It's a challenge to represent everybody. Just picking up on Councillor Conniff's point of view there, but I think the big challenge is to get people along to vote. And I can see that, well, I'm fortunate to be in the Whangarei Heads ward where we have about a 57% turnout for voting, which is one of the highest in the country. But overall, it's about 33%, is it? So I think in terms of this discussion, I would just say that the challenge really is to get people along to vote. And my thought is that the simpler the voting method is, the better. I will be supporting the amendment.
Councillor Benny.
Yeah, I wasn't going to comment on this because I just think, for me, that if we want more diversity in here, the Maori representation argument, which is coming up, is the more important one. I look at us as a diverse group, and I think we are pretty diverse in our beliefs and in our appearances. So I've read the comments on social media, and I decided to stay out of those comments, and I think wisely so. And there was a lot of confusion in those comments about the STV voting system. For that reason, I am going to go with the amendment by Councillor Coccarello. But I think the Maori representation argument that we will be having soon will be much more vital in getting a diverse bunch of councillors.
Thank you, Councillor Benny. Any further discussion, Councillor Murphy?
Well, I definitely support the original motion, and that's because actually it was in 2019 this article came out. It was really interesting. It was called "The White Male Middle-Aged Face of Local Government," and it was a really interesting article because it broke down across the country local governments and how they were made up. When you look at sex, our council is actually quite unusual because so we're about half-half in Whangarei, male, female gender, but nationally, on average, women only make up about 38% of local government, even though we're 50% of the population. When you look at age, we're pretty typical. We've only got, I think, one member here who's under the age of 38, even though the average age of our population is 38. In local government, 83% of elected members are older than 51. And, when you look around, we pretty much sum that up. So for me, first past the post shows that it isn't really effective in getting a range of ages, genders, races at the table. So I know people are saying that they think FPP is more simple. I don't really think it's any more simple. Like, maybe they're the same, because what's the difference between going tick, tick, or 1, 2, 3? Like, really, it's not any more complicated. I really think, hey, maybe it would be good to try something different. I know all of Australia use STV. All of the United States use STV. Ireland, there's quite a few other countries that use STV. And I understand people say it's about getting people out to vote. Well, actually, do you know what happens? The majority of people who vote are actually also over 65 and Pākehā. So, and we have seen, like in the last elections, if you think about a Māori representation, we did see some excellent Māori candidates stand, and of course they didn't get in, none of them got in. So I think we can improve the system, and so I would say to councillors, come on, you white, male, middle-aged face of local government, let's try something different.
Councillor Murphy. Councillor Martin.
Yeah, I think it's a bit unfortunate being categorised like that. Thank you. I don't think that's quite right. Last election, I asked a heap of people whether this STV was going to be a good idea, and I ask heaps, wherever I went, I said, do you want to keep First Past the Post, or would you like to change? So it's not just lately that I've been doing, but I've been asking people again. I know a lot of people who did not vote in the hospital board thing because they couldn't be bothered with the hassle of all of this stuff. That's just straight up. So we've got a system that is getting diversity around the table, and it'll continue to do so, as Councillor Benny said, when we have the next decision on what we're going to do. But New Plymouth changed over to STV. They had a 2.5% drop, according to Mr. Ofsowski, in the number of people who voted. That's the trend that we want the opposite of, as Councillor Innes has said. So I think we should leave it at First Past the Post, and that's what I'll be supporting.
Councillor Martin. Any further discussion? Councillor Holmes.
In my experience, I don't think it makes too much difference. I think if people are intelligent enough out there to pick the very best person to do the job under the system. It's interesting though that, like in the health board, and I totally back up what Councillor Martin just said, there's a list of a whole lot of names, and it basically comes down to recognition of the name. It's not, that's all it is, it's recognition of the name, and it should be to say that you want some other method to elevate people up above what the general public see as the top person. I find it a bit alarming in a lot of sense. This isn't about who gets on council, this is about how you elect people on. In a diversity, there's plenty of opportunities for people to stand. They stand in the health board, a lot of them miss out. They stand for council, a lot of them miss out. STV works really good when it's at large. It doesn't work too good on when you've got single councillors from separate wards. So you have go from STV to appoint one person. I can't see the logic in it. I just cannot see that at all. And so part of the recommendation could have been single transferable vote across the open council, and that may have generated far more discussion. Thank you.
Councillor Connor, do you have a question?
Yeah. When does ward system change come into anything of this, just following on from every 6 years?
The representation review is required every 6 years. We undertook a representation in the last term of council, so that we're not required to have another representation review until next term. However, we can choose to, should we decide to go through that process.
Will that come into with Maori wards and whatnot as well, or is that?
Absolutely. If this council chooses to introduce Maori wards, a full representation review is then triggered. Councillors, I will be supporting the original motion. I take on many of the points that were raised, particularly, I think we need to give our voters credit. They currently have first past the post for Whangarei District Council and single transferable vote for the District Health Board, and the Northern Regional Council I think is first past the post. I don't know if they've changed their system yet. I don't know that they've made their decision. I think give our voters some credit. They have the ability to switch between both systems. But I do think there is some merit in shaking things up a little. The Local Electoral Act does give us the flexibility to make our choice over several electoral related matters. This is the choice between EPP. Bless them for giving us the choice to have this debate every 3 years. Thank you, government. We also get the chance to choose whether or not we have Māori representation, and for some of us, the decision as to whether or not to have a representation arrangements review. I think also in this, I take the point around change and the sense of not wanting to rattle things too much, because we are staring down the barrel of a lot of change with the waters reform, with the RMA reform, with all sorts of things that are going on. Do we need to introduce yet another change? But I also think that is quite a good stimulus for discussion in our community. If this means that people are more engaged in the electoral process, yahoo! Actually, whakare isn't that bad when it comes to voter turnout compared with others, but it definitely could be and should be better. Let's get people talking about it. Let's really stimulate some discussion. And if this is one way of doing it, bring it on. Any further discussion? I will put the amendment, and just to be clear, the amendment is that Council, pursuant to section 27 of the Local Electoral Act 2001, resolves to retain the first past the post electoral system for the 2022 triennial elections. A division has been called for by Councillor Deming. Those in favour, please raise your hands.
Councillors Cockerillo, Hulse, Reid, Innes, Martin, Golightly, Benny, Cooper and Deeming.
Those against?
Councillors Peters, Connor, Murphy, Cutforth and Your Worship the Mayor.
That is carried. It becomes the substantive motion. Councillor Cutforth, did you wish your right of reply? Before there is any further, I'll open it up for any further discussion on the motion, but you can actually, have I got that right? You just got it, yeah.
Thank you, Worship. I think it's been a really good discussion. I do want to answer the question of sort of bias, if you like, and predetermination. I mean, I think people do not overestimate what is put on social media. I think what I put on social media was, yes, I support it, but really, do people realise that this vote is coming up? And it's really important that people out in the community understand that this vote is coming up at council, and people need to pay attention and come along if they're interested. I'm sorry that the vote has not gone the way of STV. I think that inevitably this council will move that way, but it may just take a bit longer. I do not understand people who see that FPP is a simple system and therefore we don't want to change it. I think you'll find that more young people will vote with their feet by not participating because of a system that they do not feel meets their needs. But hey, I look forward to a vote in 3 years' time. Regrettably, I won't be here, but I'm positive that eventually good will out. Thank you.
You never know, there might be a poll. I will put, the right of reply has been had. I will put the motion. Those in favour, aye. Aye. Against? No. Carried. Item R, councillors. We have been sitting for nigh on 2 hours. We're not allowed to let you go beyond 2 hours sitting still. So we will adjourn for a break. Please be back at 11:15 and more. I apologise Tēnā koutou katoa, no mai, hai mai, piki mai, kaki mai, to Amo. We have, where's our councillor Dean? On the phone.
Doesn't take small things and small minds, he's not.
We'll be back, I'm sure. So we're, yes it is actually. Page 96 of our, page 90 of our agenda. I'm just skipping through the other. Page 90 of our agenda has item 6.4, regional economic development, progress towards a joint delivery model. The recommendations on page 90. I'm going to move the recommendations. Do I have a seconder?
Yeah, I'll second.
Councillor Ennis is seconding. Councillors, I've moved this today for a number of reasons. We've been talking about this, welcome back Councillor Benny, for quite some time, going right back to the Martin Jenkins report, section 17A report on economic development delivery in the region. And you would have read through the agenda papers, the fact that the Far North Council, Far North District Council, Kaikoura District Council and Northland Regional Council have all agreed to the recommendations, and we are the last of the 4 local authorities in our region to make a decision on this, and today's the day. You'll also see that from page 96, the original report that Tony brought to us in July was amended, and that's got most of the information that we were going to look at on that day, but it was deferred through to this decision. Since subsequent to that, we've also had discussions at Northland Ford together. So the reason I'm supporting this recommendation is based on the professional report by Martin Jenkins, looking at how we can benefit from working collaboratively with the other authorities in the region and really making the most of the skills and talents that Northland have in regard to economic development strategy and implementation across the region. You'll be familiar with the skills and talents of their staff. They're a small and nimble team, and they're incredibly effective. And in fact, a lot of the work that goes on we don't see. And that's certainly one of the things that we need to be ensuring that in future that the lines of communication between both organisations are improved, that it's very clear to them what our priorities are. We have involvement in the strategy setting and also the implementation of any plans around economic development, around the visitor sector, which hopefully when the international visitors can come back to our shores, we can really have a compelling, attractive proposition for people to be coming to visiting our region, because it is a significant contributor to our economy. I would imagine that you'll be looking through the numbers and looking to see whether or not there is any real benefit in ramping up the investment that our ratepayers would be making into this aspect of business. And I can imagine, like you, I challenged myself around that and thought, is it really going to bring us bang for buck? And the point to be made there is that for it to be effective, we need to be around the table ensuring that the people who are governing it and the relationship between the organisations is strengthened and ensuring that our ratepayer investment is maximised. We have got some terrific people who are currently embedded in the organisation in the way of Tanya, doing district promotions, and what an excellent job she does representing our district. That is the sort of model that I want to see, is ensuring that people are dedicated to each of the authorities around the region within the organisation, and with that additional capability through funding that will be enabled. So the real benefits have been outlined as with regard to ensuring the voice with central government investment through PGF applications. I think it's quite noticeable that Whangarei, despite the northern region getting a significant amount of investment through PGF and current infrastructure partners, our district by population hasn't got its fair share of that. I'm not talking specifically about whether or not that's anybody's fault as such, but I guess the one voice to represent the region has a real advantage. We've also got, so looking at the benefits on page 104, some of the examples were the greater ability to help councils develop funding applications for projects, development of a regional destination marketing and event strategy, knowing that we had our own events strategy to develop, and that would be augmented and included in it. Resourcing to champion and improve digital connectivity, which is critical to the people who live in our region for accessibility. In fact, I mentioned to Ministers Mahuta and Henare the other day about the divide, the digital divide. There's a greater expectation that our communities will be using electronic means for COVID contact tracing, and I pointed out that actually a lot of our people simply don't have that digital connectivity. Obviously we're going through our long-term planning process, and if this proceeds today, we'll be having to build those budgets into our long-term planning process, and also giving our community the opportunity to feedback on those changes. So I think the steps ahead of us are quite clear, they've been spelled out, and looking and being able to build it over a 6-year period, an increase in our investment into this important aspect of our business. So I will open it up for debate.
Just a question.
Councillor Martin.
I see here that we're looking at 105k plus a full-time equivalent. What's the value of that?
Roughly speaking, you should assume that our staff members are around 100,000, which is the salary plus computers and office space and all that sort of stuff. So that's a rule of thumb.
So that's how much we would be expecting to contribute.
That's what we're currently contributing, Councillor Martin.
200 or 100?
We currently contribute 105,000 per annum, plus we have the Tony Robson who's our staff member.
So 200.
Yeah, a little more than 2. Councillor Peters.
I've thought a lot about this. I realise that it is a greater financial burden on our ratepayers. And so considering that, although it isn't in the first year, it will ramp up to speed so. However, on the other side, I really support collaboration. And collaboration as a northern region on this issue is absolutely vital. I also note within Northern Inc. a change of leadership over the last couple of years, and that they have initiated a meaningful relationship with Hapu and Iwi and community going forward, that they are going to incorporate, or they intend to incorporate the voices of those sectors more strongly to advocate on our behalf in Wellington for our area for economic development. So both on the basis of the work that they have done over the last few years, and also the real need to be collaborative overall the area, I support this.
Councillor Peters. Councillor Cockburn.
Yeah, Madam Chair, I asked a question, and I still require an answer to the question that I asked. And the question I asked was, how do we explain rating our ratepayers twice? Both the regional rating for this item and the district council will be rating for this item. How will I be explaining that to my ratepayers?
Sorry, when did you ask that question?
I asked that during the mayoral forum, and I still didn't get an answer then, so I'm still waiting for an answer on that.
You mean North and Ford together?
North and Ford together, sorry.
I think you would find that there are a number of issues that are rated for by both Whangarei District Council and Northland Regional Council for the benefit of our mutual ratepayers. This would be an example of that. Tony, did you have anything to add to that?
Through the chair, I guess it's the same as the regional facilities like parks and those sorts of things there. So there are a number of occasions for it. I guess if you're going to be really pedantic, they're actually being rated 3 times because there's also the investment growth reserve, which is included in it as well. So there's a range of ratings there, but I guess it's around what's the wider benefit for Northland and the communities that they're going to represent. In this case, part of it's around that improved reach both to varying communities, which the Northland Regional Council can't fulfil a person under the rating solely, and that also reaching to iwi and to Māori communities and other communities to provide the same level of service that I guess we receive here in Whangarei, and I think sometimes we take for granted.
Councillor Cutforth.
Thank you, Worship. I'm not very comfortable with the recommendation, but I'm very interested to hear the debate. But it seems to me that there's a sort of a solution looking for a problem or something with it. We already have Northland Inc., which we contribute to at the scale of $200,000 a year, thereabouts. The other 2 local authorities are currently not contributing to that. So we're basically pulling our weight, if not more, with that organisation. I recall the discussion when Martin Jenkins, not Martin Jenkins, but the person from Martin Jenkins, his name escapes me right at the moment, came to speak to this to council, and I certainly got the impression that there wasn't strong support for the CCO model, and that Martin Jenkins, the person from Martin Jenkins, had sort of picked that up. And even in the Martin Jenkins report that came through, it was sort of damned with faint praise, I think is probably the expression. It wasn't strongly supportive of the CCO model. It was more like, well, like maybe this is the best way to go. To me, we've already got Northland Inc. Northland Inc., as Councillor Peters has pointed out, has had a change of leadership. It's had some change of board members. I don't know if it's small and nimble, but it's maybe medium-sized and sort of somewhat nimble, maybe, I don't know, the board may disagree. But we've already got it, we've been supporting it. I don't see how a change to being a joint CCO would necessarily benefit Whangarei District Council. And the fact that we would be able to choose representation for the CCO, to me actually means that we potentially have less say on that organisation, because we would be we would be appointing, not even one of our own people, but we would be appointing a panel who would appoint one person for Whangarei to represent us when NRC has X numbers and the other councils have representation as well. I would have thought we would have more influence, and Northland Inc. would have more accountability back to our district by us continuing an annual grant application, where Northland Inc. needs to come to this council, explain what it has done that is of benefit to this district, not exactly cap in hand, but that money is something that we then have control over, that rather than being inevitably just part of a larger CCO. I can't see, Councillor Peters talked about collaboration, but all the things in this report seem to me to be things that are happening and can certainly happen better, but they don't need a new structure to make that happen. So I'll be interested in the debate, but at the moment I'm just not, I'm not convinced, I guess, of the need for us to join into a CCO, and in fact I wonder if it would be more to just fundraise advantage to continue as we are. Thank you.
Councillor Cooper.
Question, Cooper?
Thank you, Your Worship. I won't be supporting the recommendations for two reasons. The first is that, again, for the second time today, there hasn't been any talk about risk. The first time was with the most significant thing to happen in Phil Hols's 30 years of being on the council, and there was no talk about risk. There's no talk about risk or positive, negative or positive in this proposal. The second, and we will be committing to a long-term funding if we go ahead. We should be talking about that. I think the councillors should be asking themselves, why are we not talking about that? The second thing is that in the one case since I've been on council, and it would have been really helpful to have had a report from Northland Inc. They asked it to be withheld from us councillors. And because of that, I'm still smarting from that, and I am unable to support the recommendation.
Councillor Innes.
Thank you, Your Worship. I sort of come to this with an open mind, in the fact that I pick up that question of risk. I look at the risk of not being involved, and I look at change that is happening, and I look at the RMA, and I see there quite clearly what's signalled in terms of going forward in the reform of the RMA is a spatial plan at a regional level. I feel that, again, if we have a look at what's coming down the road, I see this regional economic development strategy as being quite critical. We've seen that through the CIP and also through the PGF funding, how important it is to be able to have a voice. And I think that voice needs to be at a very early stage. And if we are part of a CCO, we will have a say in terms of the statement of intent of that CCO. I agree with Councillor Cooper. I see that we need to have a stronger relationship. We need to ensure that there's quarterly reporting through to council. As a shareholder, I see that we are would be very much involved with the direction that's set. Yet, on the other hand, I don't see regional economic development substituting for district economic development. I went to the residents survey, and on page 194, I see district promotion, tourism and economic development is second behind roading. So obviously, as a community, we do see economic development as being a key component. This actually enables us to take a stand forward, one that we are very much more than collaboration. We are a partner, and we are looking towards a regional direction. So, I support what we have in front of us as a way to go forward. Thank you.
Further debate. Councillor Martin.
Yeah, I have some concerns with it. With Kuiper putting in 25k, that's a really big commitment, and the far north 80, and us 205 effectively, plus what we're already putting into economic development. It's an awful lot of money. And I've always felt that economic development should at least have the potential to be economic. And we swore an oath to look after the Whangarei district, and most of the economic development that we've been doing, we need to have a focus locally. And the only way that can actually happen is if we keep it in-house. pretty much within what we're at. Like we're doing now, I think we're starting to make real progress, and I think it would be a shame if we changed from the status quo that we've got at the moment.
Councillor Martin. Councillor Dean.
You go first.
Your Worship. So Martin Jenkins' report discusses that the costs and risks are manageable and will not, in their opinion, outweigh the benefits of the proposal. But unless I missed it in reading this item, the costs and risks other than funding don't appear to have been demonstrated and itemised in the same manner as the benefits have been. And the regional, as Councillor Innes just commented, the regional economic development is substituting for the district development. It seems to me that with this item, we're reinventing the wheel. As I recall, I swore an oath to represent this district, and I feel as though the autonomy of being able to do that is actually rapidly being removed from me without the ability to actually have an input into pretty much any working of our council and for the benefit of our ratepayers. That really concerns me. The development of our district has to be the prime consideration of this council and this district. If that's taken away from us, in a group into which we will have very, very limited input, then we're losing a major part of the purpose of us being elected by our community. So, for those reasons, I won't be supporting the motion.
Councillor Dean. Councillor Kokorolo.
Yeah, Madam Chair, I just have a question, a clarification question. When we look at the page 94, which goes through and says what costs are coming for the council, it's excluded the 105, or so to say the 205. I'm trying to find the extra FTE. Is that included in those figures, or is the FTE actually also outside of that the whole time for all of those items?
I think it should be clear that the FTE is an employee of Whangarei District Council. So this is the financial investment that we're making.
So this is only the financial contribution, that's it?
Have I got that correct?
Through the Chair, I think in the earlier briefing we also spoke about there's still going to be a cost to be maintained within the district council for district development. So it's not like we divest all our responsibilities at the district level. So there's that cost and the extra side of it. So there's $700,000, which equates to by year 24, 25, whatever it is that plus the operational costs that exist today at a district development level.
So it's on top of. Thank you.
Councillor Peters.
Just a question, yeah. Is there any ability for the representation on the CCO to be weighted differently?
Through you, Madam Chair, we can ask, but up till now, the regional council in particular has been very clear that this needs to be done on merit, and this is the mechanism that has been proposed. So I would say it is possible, but unlikely.
Councillors, any other debate? Councillor Connor?
Just with, if this went ahead, hearing the concerns of the council was about taking it away from us, will we be losing anything if we go into this moment? Like if it goes out to all Northland per se, will we be losing anything we didn't already have, or will we be benefiting from it?
I'll refer that to Tony.
Through the Chair, we'll still be maintaining the services that we undertake today. So we'll still be taking the same things which we have, we will still have. there would be some added benefits that have been spoken about in the paper around joined up services, around a better reach, about more engagement with iwi and Māori. I guess what we've got to remember too, that economic development is actually just building a platform of which our communities can be successful in whatever way that looks like. So a large chunk of what we do as a council anyway, whether it's been building roads or engaging with our communities to get our visions and our plans right, that is all part of economic development in the widest sense. What we do at district development is just going to be slightly more focused, and what economic development does at a regional level is probably slightly broader and more strategic. So it's just making sure that the whole continuum is provided within the Northland region.
I can definitely see where it will benefit the rest of Northland as well, because I've heard them refer to it as Whangarei Inc. rather than Northland Inc., even though it's named that. And even with the floods that we've had, the drought that we had recently, we had to be able to support our neighbours and everybody around us too. So to be able to support them, to be able to benefit, we'll be able to drag people past Warkworth and up into Northland more as well, because a lot of people do kind of shoot off to the sides. I've got my concerns as well, but sometimes there's things we need to be able to move forward to be able to actually, there are benefits that come at a cost. But it is a lot of money, and I hope that it does provide benefits that will outweigh that cost. So it's, I have my concerns, but it's...
Councillor Connor? Question. Councillor Cutford, question?
Thank you, Worship. Through you, I just wondered if Mr. Collins could explain clearly the appointment process for what would be council's our one representative, because what I'm understanding is that we would appoint somebody to an appointments board, and the appointments board would then make them. Anyway, if it could be explained to us, I think that would be useful.
This is my understanding, so I'll be as clear as I can make it. Council will be an equal shareholder in the joint CCO. Council will appoint someone to the appointment panel, so a member of the council will become a member of the appointment panel.
A council,
the appointment panel will appoint the board members to the board of the CCO. What was it? Yeah. Sorry, that's my understanding.
The resident expert in the Vaughan, if you wouldn't mind just coming forward, because if you can clarify that for us, that would be helpful. Councillors, you all know Vaughan.
Morning, Your Worship, morning, councillors. The only thing I was just trying to check my memory on was whether it was one or two appointments. But I mean, so the process Tony's outlining is correct. So this council puts forward people onto a joint committee for a better term, where all the councils are represented, and then they basically have two key functions. They choose the directors of the organisation, and they set the statement of intent, so they set the direction for the organisation. I was just, I'll do it in the paper. I can't remember whether it was one or two appointments per council, depending on whether the funding needed, but that process is correct too.
I guess the third thing those two, one or two appointees would do would be reporting back to the White Council around those processes.
So, just so that I'm clear, so this council would appoint a councillor rep to an appointment panel along with the other regional councillor, who would then appoint a board member who's not a member of this council, who's appointed on merit, if you like, by the entire board. Okay, so it's really quite hands-off, if you like.
Just to be clear, the membership is on a joint committee, and that committee does the appointments of the directors. Yeah, so it's a joint committee. It's page 105. Is the Councillor Murphy. Thank you.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think there are two sides to the coin. On one way, it provides a really fantastic opportunity, but then on the other hand, there are risks too. And for me, like when you look at page 94, so you look at the shareholding and governance arrangements, We see how different CCOs operate. One of them is exempt from reporting. For me, the question is, would this bring about more transparency and accountability, or the opposite? And so really, for me, that's the most important question. I mean, I think it's reasonable to expect that a council contributes financially, you know, to the work that Northland Inc does. I think that's, and our population is growing, you know, I think that that's fair to expect a reasonable financial contribution. But for me, it's about, will the board of directors be accountable to our rate, you know, how accountable will they be to our ratepayers? And local government is all about looking after the four well-beings. And I think about some of the projects that Anthony have worked on in the past, and there hasn't been, because, you know, they're not required to report. Well, they do report, but what I'm trying to say is, this could be an opportunity to, you know, set a clearer direction for what we want. I get nervous when I see, you know, the formal joint committee will appoint the commercial-focused Northland Inc board of directors on merit. For me, that raises a red flag because, you know, I'm into triple accounting economics that looks after the social, the economic, and the environmental well-beings. So the opportunity there is that we can, you know, that through a new governance structure we can build some of that stuff into the statement of intent. The risk is that in the future the board of directors are off, you know, I don't know, pulling in waste to energy incineration plants and, I don't know, fertiliser factories and who knows. So there's risk, but there's also opportunity. So I guess my question for Tony would be, so we're being told there would be a quarterly reporting back, because we've seen, you know, it's quite hard when an organisation comes with their statement of intent or their, we can contribute to creating the shareholders agreement, but then over time, how much influence will we have on an annual or quarterly basis to actually have input into what's happening?
Thanks, Tony.
Through the chair, I guess there's no answer that I can give now around that, but we can give an example of what happens now between Northland Inc and NRC, if that would be useful.
Yeah.
Thank you, Tony. Thank you, Chair, Your Worship. I guess if I explain the relationship we have with the Regional Council, and I would anticipate that a joint CCO is going to have the same kind of relationship. So we have a thought, so they choose our directors and they're on a rotational basis and they are chosen for their expertise. So you have an influence around the type of directors you choose, but the main influence you have over the organisation is through the statement of intent process. Now there is a legislative process to do that, and essentially from about, will probably come out probably September, October, we start drafting that. We go back and forth formally between ourselves and the council. We do a letter of expectation. We have a workshop where we start talking about what we think we're going to be doing next year. And over a series of about 3 workshops, we negotiate what they would like us to do, and what we think we can deliver for the funding we've got. So there's a very robust back and forward, face-to-face with the Regional Council at the moment around setting that statement of intent process. We have to believe we can achieve it, they have to be confident that it's delivering what they want, and they give us direction around the type of investments and things we should look at. They give us direction. Currently they're quite strong on climate change, so there's quite an influence around how are we bringing that triple or quadruple bottom line stuff in the projects we report and things. If you think of the other side of it in terms of how we report on our performance of that statement of intent, formally we do a report every year. We are audited on our processes as well. We go for a formal audit just like councils do, which is great fun. But we also go quarterly to Regional Council. So every quarter we're in front of the Regional Council and we're giving them an update on all of our work program. We have a set of key performance indicators we have to meet. We give them an update on those kind of things. So I think I'd be reasonably upfront the relationship we have with regional council is very different to the one we have with you currently because of the nature of the ownership relationship. If you were a shareholder, we anticipate we would be doing those things with you. So you'd be seeing us quarterly, you'd be getting input into our direction, you would be making sure and checking the progress we're at, as well as, and I emphasise the director stuff as well, because I think choosing the two actually is how you have real influence over an organisation. Those two things are the real drivers of where an organisation goes.
That's useful. So you would see, just to check, you would see that continuing with this new governance structure, you would see that type of reporting and relationship happening with all four councils, if we should.
So arguably for us it's not a lot different. We still have to do a statement of intent, we still have to do all the reporting and all the process that goes with it. It's a legislative process. The different bit for us will be just how you do that in terms of the joint ownership model, and in terms of whether we report back to that committee or whether we actually come and report to every council. I suspect the better process is that we're going to be spending a whole lot more time, and I kind of hate saying this, but spending a whole lot more time in front of councils quarterly, giving them robust updates on where we're at. That's the relationship stuff Carol talked about before. That's how we start working together a lot more effectively.
Thank you. Thank you, Lord.
Can I have a question of Board just before he sits down?
Councillor Cooper, a question?
Thank you, Board. So the 200,000, you said if we were a party we'd get quarterly reports, but the $200,000 that we put in, you feel doesn't give us that right at the moment?
No, that's no. So we, no. In terms of that process, in terms of the statement of intent process that I outlined, we're not a party to that. We do that, and we offer that to all the councils. We often don't get in front of councils as regularly as we would like, for both timing and resourcing reasons, but in terms of the funding you provide currently, it's a very different structure.
Yeah, Madam Chair, I'm going through your recommendations, so I've got a question here for this. It's basically, your recommendation states to support the proposal, approve the proposal, and support the principle. If that wasn't to succeed, if the councillors were to vote against that, this could still happen anyway. Because
Are you asking a question or telling me?
it's asking a question. Can that actually happen anyway? Because the motion actually is to support the proposal that recommends. So in other words, whether we support it or not, will it still come back to council anyway?
I think without the motion, if the motion fails, status quo would continue. That a joint CCO could be formed with the other councils but not with Funday. That would be the outcome I would anticipate. Councillor Martin, a question?
Yeah, so if this was lost, would we still put that extra staff member in to assist with our local people? If we've got that money, clearly we've got it available, would we give that extra full-time staff to support the existing structure?
Can I just check with you, are you saying in addition to this existing staff member that we already have working at Northern Deck?
Yeah, if we're putting the extra money in, we could put it into, would we consider putting it into our existing operation so that they had more?
Through the long-term plan process, looking at investing more into the current. That is an option for us, but that's not a given if this fails. Councillor Conover, a question?
If it does fail, do we then lose the benefit within it? Like, if we don't go ahead with it, will we lose what we already have with Northland?
I'll see if I can cover some of those points in my right of reply. Any further discussion? Councillor Holtz?
Yes, well, I'm not going to support the recommendation. I wasn't even going to talk today, but the way it's going, I think I need to. I think as the discussion goes around here and in debate, it seems like we're adding more and more bureaucracy into it. And my argument all the way through, and in particular at the workshop, I thought some of the presenters there would have listened to some of the comments in the room, because it's about trust. If we want to get the best out of economic development, we've got to trust the people who are in the front line, negotiating with government departments, negotiating with council to get across the line. The more bureaucracy you put in, the bigger handbrake for them to do their job. I've got great trust in some of the guys working there. I've seen Vaughan work, I've seen Tony work, I've seen how they do their work. So I don't want them to show all that initiative, all that investment of their time and energy into a really good proposal, and then have to have all that good thing go to a council to be approved at the end. It's counterproductive. The scope should be clear. The workers under that scope should have the ability to go out and seek the help they need from other parties, come back, make a recommendation based on fact, based on finances, based on what the scope of works is. The more bureaucracy you put in, it makes these people more inefficient. And that's been based on years of watching this type of development going through councils. Sooner or later, we're going to elect people and give them the trust to go out there and deliver for us. But give them the freedom to express themselves, give them the freedom to show initiative, give them the freedom to make a few decisions themselves. Because if we still got that handbrake on, it doesn't matter what you do, all you do is add bureaucracy and reporting measures, which are absolute pain in the butt for any board or any CCO. Because 3 months goes like a flash. It means they just report, they start on Friday the next report. I'd rather have that person out delivering something. And as far as the Wongarei district goes, we provide probably 65% of economic development. And we've been doing it consistently. Just go back 20 years ago, we didn't have a port here. Just think about what's happened since the port's gone there. Think of the expansion of Golden Bay Cement in recent time. We allowed the plane changes, we allowed all that to happen. So we've got a role, and we're playing that role daily, weekly, at council. But so, until I see a change where we're going to trust the people to go out and show the initiative, I'm not going to support it more bureaucracy. Thank you.
Councillor Peters, did you have a question?
Yes, it was about requesting accountability or our ability to put forward as a council suggestions for direction towards Northern Link. I was thinking that possibly under either system we would be able to ask for more ability to input. Am I wrong?
My understanding is that unless we are in a governance role, we don't have any input into the statement of intent. But I will, again, I'll cover that in my...
So the question is, so as under, we give someone a grant, can we put some conditions on the grant? So that's the question.
Tony, response
might be rhetorical.
Through Chief, it's my understanding there are some sort of conditions, albeit very lightly attached to the grant at present, and they're predominantly around the area of the RTO, which is Regional Tourism Organisation, and the Regional Business Partnership, which is the business capability stuff. So it's very loose, but there is an expectation that the grant has been used to move those things forward within the wider statement of intent that Northern Link has. I would say it would be really difficult for organisations like Northern Inc. to exist if every year or even every 3 years the funding attached to that grant was contestable, because it doesn't allow them to plan forward. I mean, if we were to continue with status quo, for example, another model which might be more palatable is that we continue as per normal with our grants, and there's not a lot of rigor attached to that, but then we could buy other services or products off them over time. So like if we had a particular development in Whangarei we wanted to pursue, we could actually engage Northern Link to do that on their behalf. So that would be like the very, very light version of what you would do from a CCO point of view. But it'd still be a client-master relationship as opposed to a collaborative partnership.
Thank you, Tony. Councillors, I will take my right to reply. I want you to look at the motions, and the motions is that Council supports the proposal. That has a final bullet point that it goes through the public consultation, through our long-term plan around the establishment of Northern Link as a joint regional CCO. So today is not the decision, the final decision as to whether or not we would. This would include taking it to our people. I think it's a really important point that probably hasn't come out in the debate. It's looking at approving the recommendation for appointment of directors and input into the statement of intent. At the moment, we have no right to have any input into the statement of intent for North and Inner. This would give us that right. It also, we currently have no right to have any input into the investment and growth reserve. None. That's a really big sum of money when you look at our small 105,000 compared with the 1.8 million from the regional council for the investment growth reserve. This would give us the right to have input into how that is invested, which we don't currently have. And also, with the third point, looking at the development of the regional economic development strategy for inclusion in our long-term planning cycles. I distinctly recall the Tautoko Northland Economic Action Plan, and it was, I think Councillor Denning was on the steering group for that, and it was deliberately an action plan so that we had input into what activities were going to be developed around our region and included in Whangarei. And I think one of Martin Jenkins' criticisms was that it was too long, too ambitious, the projects that were included in that. I disagree with them. I think it was a great ambition to build on the platforms of digital enhancement, education, primary sector. So at the moment, we're looking at shared services across the region. We've benefited, and this would be another, where we have input into the shared services around regional activities and get the benefit of specialists and professionals having input into our implementation in our district for the benefit of our ratepayers. So I think I've covered everything. This is an add-on with an added accountability to this council and our ratepayers. So I will put the motion, and I will call for a division. Those in favour, please raise your hand.
Councillor Peters, Connor, Innes, Murphy, Benny, and to be worshipped the Mayor.
Those against?
Councillors Cockerillo, Hulse, Reid, Martin, Golightly, Cutforth, Cooper, and Demon.
The motion is lost. Brings us to the next agenda item, item 6.5, the Tautoko Worker Employment Package Storm Response Funding Variation. Thank you all for your attendance today. Kelvin, if you wouldn't mind sharing. We've got recommendations on page 110. Do we have a member for the recommendations? Councillor Martin is moving, Councillor Connor is seconding. Councillor Martin?
Yeah, this is just another opportunity that we had to get some of our repairs done. I think the fact that it's cover the costs associated with accelerating existing storm repair programs is really good, and we can cover both operational and capital, and it does parks and storm. So I just think this is, I urge everybody to support this, and thanks for bringing it forward. So it's really good.
Any debate?
This is just a question. So it's about basically acknowledging that the social procurement targets are not required to be measured or reported on. So could you just elaborate on that for me, please?
Through the chair, the original funding had a number of social procurement objectives. Those are quite restrictive in terms of accelerating programs and particularly with skilled resources. What we've agreed with MB for this portion of funding only, so these two items, is that because it's specifically targeted at storm response and not so much about worker redeployment, that those reporting requirements are not going to be upheld, but we are still trying to target them. so it's not a hard objective for these ones. The reason it's gone through, it's been excluded from this because they've used the existing funding mechanism as an easier way of getting the funding to us as quickly as possible. So had it been a separate contract, those procurement objectives wouldn't have even been talked about.
Okay. Yeah, thank you for the explanation. I mean, that's fair. I just wanted to make the point that for me personally, those targets are still really, really important. And it is good seeing out there in the community. I have actually noticed, looking at the teams on the roads, I'm definitely seeing, young people, I'm seeing women, I am seeing more diversity there. And I read somewhere that a lot of those projects are bringing in people who were unemployed. So I think I do support the recommendation, and I'm glad that we still, we're still focused on making sure that our contractors, are educated and aware about the importance of social procurement.
Thank you, Councillor Murphy. Any further discussion? I'll put that motion. Those in favour, aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Item 6.6, flood damage repair costs. Recommendations on Word 1 and 4. Councillor Holmes is moving. Recommendations and Councillor Connick is seconding. Councillor Holmes.
Yes, one of the reasons I moved this is actually nothing to do with what's in the recommendation. It's, I support the point was, there's a few comments that we need to, I need to speak to. It's using emotional language like in the number 4, possibly the largest storm in living memory hit the district on the 17th of July. So I did a little bit of research. And there's a great book that's put out after the 2007 flood. And it states,
Possibly the largest one.
it says here, about the biggest flood. It's remarkable, it was the biggest flood was in 1981. And then a cyclone Bola came through in 1988. And the barometric pressure for a cyclone Bola was 940, the lowest barometric pressures there's ever been in Northland. That went through the country, and total expenses, all in the book here, at time 1988 prices, $84 million. Now, if you've been around council a while, everything doubles in about 7 or 8 years. The council conditions is 10. 3 times 88 million, 84 million. $250 million worth of damage, cyclone Bola. I know, I was farming, flattened my approved, engineered approved windmill, flattened it. And then along came 2007. There's absolutely fantastic photos here of the slips and damage done. Helena Bay Hill, washed out. Springfield Road, 170 metres of Springfield Road disappeared. The whole lane, not even lane left, the whole road slipped away. All evidence that we should not get too emotional about it, because what happened is these events come along and they come along regularly. And that's why I support the motion, because we've got to do the work and fix it up again. The 2007 one to council, the cost of roading was $14 million. This one, not even half that. So let's not use the emotional language all the time. Let's just be quite sensible about what we're doing. And it's got nothing to do with climate change, because this has been happening forever. We get these adverse effects fixed. And actually there's a great highway here where in 2007, the State Highway 1 at Ruakaka, because I know there's a photo of totally flooded in 4 places along State Highway 1 at Ruakaka. And one of them's on my farm, because there's a photo here. Backing it up on my farm, showing people go through. Now, if we're going to scare our residents, that is totally irresponsible. What we should be doing is addressing the problems and dealing with the problems. But that's our role. And to say, this is the greatest one, gee, look at the headlines a couple of weeks ago. Emergency that, emergency that, all this, use these emotional words distract from the work we do, because we don't have to react. We've had staff reacting to these situations ever since they formed councils. So that's what I want to talk about. Thank you. Based on facts.
Any further debate? Councillor Murphy?
Oh, thanks. I've got two questions on a little pull-out sheet. One of the issues there, so was the Northern Regional landfill damage to ground causing leachate. So, I mean, I guess with the heavy rain, there would have been a lot more leachate, but I'm just wondering, and Alan, you're actually on, you're a director, so you might know, can you give any clarity over what that line was?
Through the chair, I'm just looking. Right, through the chair, so we have one side construction at the moment, and there was some minor slips around that. So that changed the way the leachate was collecting, but hasn't altered all the way that's at the source, but no damage at all at the foot of the landfill.
Okay.
So there's no breaches or any altered or anything like that.
So that cost will just be about repairing the slips?
Yes, yes. And that won't be a council cost, but just that the landfill's insured through council's broker to give economies of scale.
Okay.
So that cost will be the claim will be through LLP, not the council.
Okay. All right, and then there was the other one as well about the weighbridge being damaged, and I'm just wondering how the storm, that's a bit further down, it's about 7 or 8 down, that's at the resort, I suppose. I was just wondering how the heavy rain damaged the weighbridge.
Again, through the chair, there's a site above the resort which has been developed. We had been in consultation discussion with the owner prior to the storm about their sediment control and our concerns about how it was not being managed. And that came to pass. A lot of sediment came down through the storm and just the salt went underneath the weighbridge, so it had to be cleaned out.
Okay.
So it was about cleaning as opposed to repairs.
Okay. Thank you for the clarification.
Any further discussion? Councillor Connor?
Obviously, the storm that we've just recently had has been a huge one, and we have been inundated with people requesting works being done and things. And just this morning, I actually heard one that was reported again, but nobody had actually gone to deal with it. So making sure that we are allowing people to get the money to be able to get this stuff done is imperative. I mean, with the potential, I mean, the 1981 flood was prior to my living memory because I wasn't here. But it's those type of ones that we need to be able to plan for. It's the civil defense, it's the storm water within the 3 waters, and all those other type of issues, and making sure that the roads are secure as possible, because there are roads that are directly in front of people's places or whatnot, or the hillside may be going down that you've been there for 20 years and you don't actually know about these things happening until it happens. That we need to make sure we're looking after people. It's the maintenance and making sure that we are doing as much as we possibly can to make our constituents as safe as possible. So we need to make sure this happens.
Councillor Cutforth?
Thank you, Worship. I don't want to argue with Councillor Hols's living memory, because I'm sure this living memory is the longest in the room. But I'd just note that it does say possibly the largest storm in living memory, possibly. So there was a little adjunct there. I have a question really from Mr. Adcock, and it is related to the fact that we're getting $2 million through MB, for the Chief Executive perhaps, and I thought I also heard that some further funding has come through for flood-related stuff for Northland, of which I'm assuming we'll get a proportion. But if we're getting the $2 million, do we need to approve up to $5 million?
Very good question, Councillor Cutler. Fortunately, the Chief Executive is prepared to respond.
Excellent.
Good question.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Through you, Madam Chair. So this is to authorise the overspend. Obviously, of that 5 million, 2 million will be offset by the government grant, for want of a better term. I don't think we have anything in addition to the 2 million. There has been some money go towards flood protection works through the regional council, I think. But most of that other money appears to have gone to the Far North, and Moriwa in particular.
So am I right in thinking that the approving up to the 5 million would include the government contribution? Is that what you're saying?
That's right. So it's 5 million extra spend, and then 5 minutes ago you approved getting 2 million to offset that spend. So that's the project. So we can't net it off. We just have to do the income and the expenditure separately.
Gotcha. Thank you. I possibly understand that.
Any further debate? Councillor Murphy?
I did ask a question before. I just want to say through the CE a sincere thank you to all our infrastructure staff who are coping with an immense extra, workload now. And I know personally I've been passing on lots of CRMs, as a result of this. So I just want to say to acknowledge and say thank you for all the extra time and stress and work that's going into addressing those.
Thank you, Councillor. Just, I think we need to set some expectations here, and I know you are getting phone calls and things like that. We won't be finished cleaning up this work until the new year for all the work done, and if there's dropouts that can take months and months and months to fix. There are a lot of things that look really bad right now, and that will continue. We hope to get on top of those maybe by the end of October, so there will be unsightly things around for a period of time. Just to give you an indication, I think the roading department alone had 4 times as many requests for service, 700, and they normally get about 150. Yeah, but over four times for fix-ups after that storm, and of course we've had 2 reasonable rain events afterwards. So the community will be concerned because they will see either nothing visible or cones in places, but our contractors are doing it on the basis of the worst and most affected first. And while it always looks worse outside my gate than anyone else's, that's not necessarily the case. So just if we can ask people to bear with us for another month or 2 yet before we get on top of most of them.
That's right. Councillors, I'd just like to add, just going through these recommendations, we're approving 5 million unbudgeted. We will note that we are likely to incur an operating deficit. Remember those words. We're noting, as Rob's just talked about, non-urgent works may have to be deferred. So we're going to continue to have pain in the community with people saying, you're just not doing what I've asked you to do. And also that noting that the $2 million from the MB redeployment package will be used where it can to offset the expenditure. Can I also note that while the quantum of the sum to repair the damage is smaller than other events, every event will be unique. And I'm really pleased with the resilience of our network. I'm rapt that the detention dam up at Kotuku did its job. That protected our CBD significantly. I'm rapt that water lapped underneath the Rust Avenue Bridge, where normally it would have gone well and truly over and down into the city, because that was changed about 6 or 7 years ago. All of the initiatives that were put, the building blocks that successive councils have been investing in are paying off, but we're still getting the damage, and we will continue to, because these events will come through, and hopefully we don't have to produce another booklet like Councillor Holtz had for the deluge in 2014, which was dramatic for some other areas in our district. For some people, this has been the worst event they have ever lived through, and people are still shocked by the impact of it. And I feel for them, and this is one of the biggest insurance claims too, as an event. So it is a biggie, but it may not be the biggest we ever have. There will be more to come. Who moved that? Councillor Martin, the right of reply? Oh, sorry, Councillor Holtz moved it. I beg your pardon.
You know, I had a really good rotary design.
Go for it. Go. I will put the motion. Those in favour, aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Brings us to item 7.2, as we've done the police report, the financial report for the 1 month ending 31st of July 2020. Go forth and fix government. Recommendation that council notes the external entity position and treasury report as at 31st of July 2020. Do I have a mover for that recommendation?
Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Martin. Seconded, Councillor Demon. Any discussion? If not,
I was just going to ask a question, thank you. Alan, I think I read in here somewhere that the accounts for the month haven't done due to everything that's been going on, is that right? Did I read here somewhere that the accounts for the month haven't been done or reported on? Or have I got myself confused?
Yeah, no, it's the
Point.
first sentence.
First sentence?
The full monthly financial report
Yes,
has
right.
not been prepared due to the fine.
That's right, yeah. So obviously people have been busy, I understand that. Is this the first month, or am my memory wrong, and did this happen last month as well?
No, through the chair, for this month in the cycle, for several years now, we haven't produced a report because the pressure puts on staff while they're going through the work process.
Okay.
And the last report of the month was preparing, and that's actually included in the next item. So there's a lag period for the last one of the year, again, because we're going through the year-end process.
Thank you very much.
That question, Councillor Peter, Councillor Pomerolo.
Yeah, through Madam Chair. Through to Ellen. The graph that's shown on page 124, in previous years, that has been quite a steep up and down. Is that now because of 20% of the people now going through direct debit payments, that the graph now looks rather flat in comparison?
Through the chair, that may be partly just to scale, the way that they may look different from a previous one you're familiar with. There's normally a big drop in debt for the next month for reporting, but of course this year, because we've deferred the due date for rates, we're normally at $28 million coming through this month, we only had 9, due to some people have chosen to pay their rates. So there won't be as big a dip. So in fact, our debt closing this month will be $115 million, I anticipate. So it will be pretty flat to start with, and then we'll see a bigger dip in September.
Sorry, Madam Chair, what I was referring to is in going back 10, 15 years where we weren't actually doing direct debits. Has that made any difference to this graph?
Not significant. The biggest spikes are due to the quarterly installments.
Due to what, sorry?
The quarterly rates installments.
Okay.
Which show through the little bottoms out.
Yeah.
Any further discussion? Councillor Hobbs.
Yeah, just one question. Right at the bottom of page 124, it's got a water reserve and still got a $31 million credit debt. Hasn't any money been drawn down for that development?
Through to yes, we do. There's more to come, but that won't be exhausted until we get through all the very current long-term plan.
Thank you.
I'll put that motion. Those in favour, aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Item 7.3, page 126, operating report for the 12 months ending 30 June 2020. With the recommendation that we note the draft operating results for the 12 months ending 30 June 2020. Do I have a mover for that recommendation? Councillor Dealing is moving. Councillor Innes second. Councillor Dealing? No. Any discussion, councillors? Councillor Cutler?
I just have one comment under operating expenditure regarding personnel. I know we put on the hiring freeze, and I know we all said yes, it's okay, though some of us were wildly keen on it, but regretfully we did. But I'm just a bit concerned if the favourable variance is being offset by payments to external contractors, if we're actually having to bring in external contractors because we haven't got permanent staff, then I would suggest that it's a bit of a false economy, and I would much personally prefer to have permanent staff bringing their intellectual heft and, corporate history or whatever to this organisation than have external contractors who just take the money and run. There you go.
Through the chair, in this case, these contracts actually cover just covering staff vacancies while we're recruiting.
Sorry, I missed that element because we were
covering
mumbling.
vacancies while we're recruiting, as opposed to being brought on instead of.
Okay. Excellent answer.
Normal practice.
Good.
Thank you. Any further discussion, councillors? Councillor Murphy?
Just one question, right down the bottom, it says the NRLLP joint venture profit share is based on LED, but it didn't say, I couldn't see in the information how much that is.
What's the dividend?
Yeah, I was going to say, I received dividend.
Oh, sorry. You know, that just mention the profit share based on draft financial statements and is subject to change. But then I was just wondering what it actually was.
Through the chair, despite being a director, I can't recall off the top of my head what it was. It's included one of those consolidated lines.
It's included in okay, maybe so at our next meeting you said the accounts are coming back to us.
Well, we're having a workshop scheduled for September 15, subject to audit getting through the process and some challenges due to COVID.
Yeah. Okay, that's okay. I just was wondering. Thank you.
Madam Chair, page 132, which shows the key indicators. I'm just wondering whether the council, Alan could actually comment on the fact that development contributions and having it in an annual plan stating that we expect to get 4.8. Is this a good conclusion to have, knowing that it's always an unpredicted amount?
Through the chair, this is last year's result, not the year ahead.
Again, I'm saying, is it good to have that figure as a figure? Because we've had to put it in the annual plan anyway, and every year we put it in the annual plan. However, it's an unexpected amount, so I'm asking, is it always good to have an amount in there when we don't actually know fully what development contributions we will actually truly get?
Through the chair, we of course we have to make our best estimate of what that's going to be based on the subdivision consents in place. We always try to apply some rigour around that, but we are totally dependent on the speed which developments go to see, and then towards that trigger that's out of our hands. So it is best guess. We look at long-term trends as well as the individual one, and assess the next budget accordingly. Last year we got more than we budgeted because developments were being finished off. We've budgeted conservatively this year. Having said that, people just be trying to finish subdivisions through flight, so maybe very well again. It's more about timing than it's about moving forward.
I distinctly remember Councillor Cockerello when it was the other way around, when we had eyes bigger than our bellies and we didn't get them, and shortfall in the budget was.
And I remember that
painful.
well, because I keep saying, oh, we should be damaging that much.
Any further discussion? I'll put that motion. Those in favour, aye. Aye. Those against? Carried. Item 7.4, page 134, capital projects report for the year ending 30 June 2020, with the recommendation that we note the final capital projects report and the revised projects budget for 2020-2021. Do I have a mover for the recommendation? Councillor Murphy is moving, and seconder, Councillor Golightly. Any discussion? Questions, Councillor Murphy?
So on page 136, just with some of the variances there, so like urban intersection upgrades, so there was an overspend there of 1.8 million. I can't remember. That's the unforeseen work that we discussed at the infrastructure meeting about the poor quality of the piles.
Through the chair, the transportation projects become a little confused because each project is subject to NZTA subsidies, and if a project is deferred, the grant will try and maximise or move money into other lines to maximise that subsidy. So they'll try and manage through the overall public spend for that activity, but not effectively forsake the money coming through from NZTA. So there are unders and overs through there and timing issues. It's very hard to report in a way that's easy to understand, but that's often where you get a variance. There's not necessarily an overspend or a budget blowout. It's simply that they've progressed work because other work which you're doing ahead.
Okay. Yeah, there's a few in there, but maybe I'll just chat to Simon after the meeting. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Councillor Cockerill?
In 3 minute chair. On page 135, it talks about the Common Oval car park. Being the fact that we've got a situation now of trying to reallocate funds, is that an ideal project to still keep in there since it actually reduces the number of car parks down?
We have approved them already, so I would imagine that if we to change it, we need a changed resolution as such, because they have been approved as the adjustments. But I guess we'll be looking at, because that's in this upcoming financial year, which clearly will be shuffled around probably a number of times through the year, and we can keep an eye on that one. Any further discussion? I will put the motion. Those in favour, aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Item 7.5, Whangarei District Council 2020 credit rating. The recommendation is that Council receives the 2020 Standard Global Ratings credit rating report and notes its contents. Councillor Cockerill is delighted in moving that, and Councillor Cutforth is seconding. Councillor Cockerill?
I'm sorry, I thought it was Councillor Dean who seconded it.
No, it's all right.
Oh, okay. My apologies.
I see more fingers up than you. You're just looking straight ahead. I'm looking around the room.
Okay. Look, there's not much more to say to it. Look, it's we report as it is. It says how well Whangarei is actually doing, which is to be expected. We are quite conservative in the way we do things, which is good. Yeah, not much more I can add to it. If the report is as it is.
Any further discussion? Councillor Cutforth?
Thank you, Worship. Yes, I read the report and I read that Whangarei District Council is one of just 7 councils in the country with this credit rating, strong discipline. Then I read all this stuff about how fantastic we were, and then I looked at who wrote the report. It was our finance manager. No, seriously. And then I looked to triangulate that information to ensure that it was based on objective data. And so I turned to page 144 in my reading last night. And it does say, we assess Whangarei's standalone credit profile as AA+, which is stronger than the New Zealand sovereign. And so I thought, okay, Alan's right in terms of the But no, I mean, I do think we should recognise and acknowledge that we're in a very financially strong position, and all due respect to the people who have helped us as a council to get there. It's pretty amazing, really, and it is, as Alan has himself said, an exceptional result. Thank you.
Nice.
I through the charge, just basically say the main driver of this is actually about having the functional strategy and discipline of the members to stick to it. That's the key, getting this to right.
Very generous.
Any further gloating to be had? If not, Councillor Gurley.
I might add that this is, I'm quite pleased to be able to see that, to say that I've got a AA+ credit rating. There's other aspects of my credit rating that isn't so kind. So thank you, Alan.
Can I just echo the words of thanks from all of us as elected members to the team who make us look good. But you are right, Alan, we have had a plan, we've stuck to it, and despite many challenges to our finances, we are in good shape, but that may change. Let's hope not in the time that we've got together in this term of council. I will put that motion. Those in favour, aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Are we prepared to plug on? Item 7.6, 2020 Whangarei District Council Resident Satisfaction Survey. We've got Tony coming into the hot seat. We've got a recommendation on page 150 that Council notes the information provided in the 2020 Whangarei District Council Resident Satisfaction Survey. Do I have a mover for that recommendation? Thank you, Councillor Connor. And secondly, Councillor Benny. Any discussion? Councillor Connor.
It's wonderful to be able to see what the actual residents and people out there are actually saying as well in a relatively concise way. It's great to be able to look at along all the different lines through traffic management, rubbish, water, footpaths, etc., and all the different issues and positives that are actually come from the whole thing. Personally, I've seen this pop up through Facebook, and honestly, prior to knowing about it through council, I almost felt like one of those other little parties, groups, trying to dig up dirt on the council type of thing. So I've never actually personally interacted with it. That may just be the way it's being put across. That's just I've been seeing a lot of things like that through social media and stuff, and you get the other parties, there are groups that are trying to dig up information or stir per se, but it's always, in a manner of speaking, appeared to me as that. So I've never shared it around and gone through it and promoted it myself, which might be something that we can give feedback to them through. But for those that have filled it out, it's great to be able to see. Where is it going? Oh, I just lost the page. Especially considering we have lots of great highlights, and the dissatisfaction.
Which one?
Reporting dissatisfaction, which are the biggest ones being roading, waste services, and water flooding footpaths, and then animals and so on and so forth, where that to me highlights that it's the maintenance and things that we need to be able to make sure we're prioritizing. And currently, with most of the rest of the things, there are all the benefits, it shows that we need to be able to improve on these areas.
Thank you, Councillor Connor. Any further discussion? Councillor Cutforth?
Thank you. It's always really good to get these, and it's good to see this time that we've made some improvements, I guess, in terms of the way we're trying to collect the information, and particularly that it's looking at aligning with our activity profiles in terms of the LTP and NPAN. That just makes it more coherent and more useful. A couple of concerns I've got. One of the changes we've made is, I think, to it now being a quarterly survey rather than an annual survey. But if I'm right, we're still only getting the 600 respondents, so 150 per quarter. And my concern is that with 600, I haven't got the figures, I've got my fingers to keep my pages, but I think with 600 we have about a 4% deviation, whatever it is. Sorry, margin of error. Thank you, everybody. With 150 people, I'm assuming the margin of error would go up. So we just need to be concerned that if we're only surveying 150 people per time, of which 50 might be young people and 50 might be old, middle, and 50, that you'll get a more of a skew, so that individuals can influence it more. And I just think personally, I would much prefer that we interviewed more people, and I know that may be a bigger cost, but I think you actually get much more powerful and useful and valid information. The other thing I'd really like just to think about is, if you look on page 154, which talks a bit about the sampling and methods. So we've got a demographic breakdown that relates to our population in terms of how they've managed it, weighted it. We've got it's actually a sex, not a gender, but a sex breakdown, male, female. And I think it would be really useful, and I know it's challenging, but to look at a racial breakdown, or to introduce that as another variable, is not the right word, but another piece of information, so that we can actually start looking at the discrepancies or the differences or the lack of difference, whatever, between particularly Māori and non-Māori, but Māori and Pākehā and other ethnicities, and that would be really valuable information in a district that's growing so much at the moment too. The other comment I had was when I look on page 20 for the age group profiles, I looked at the sort of demographic breakdown, and it looked like 2/3 of the people were female all the way through, like the 18 to 39 group, 2/3 of the people were women or female. The 40 to 59, 2/3 are female, and 60 plus 2/3 were female. And I was just sort of quite surprised at that. When I wondered why we were getting a 50-50 split, because we're about 50-50, so I wasn't quite sure about that. And but what I did draw from the information was that the older, and presumably whiter, but anyway, older female people, poorer female old people, were more happy with councillors' performance than anybody else. And I thought, that must be me. And my only other comment is I think they've made a mistake, and I thought Councillor Murphy would be really interested in this, on page 162, with district water supply, where it says, when asked whether they have adopted any water conservation techniques, it's actually just under half indicated that they had. So in fact, Councillor Murphy won't be very pleased, but actually, in fact, it looks like there's less rather than more people have adopted conservation techniques. But that was just me being really picky about 11:30 last night. So I do think it's a really, really valuable survey, and I'd like us to see more resources put into it rather than, and the quarterly thing is really good.
Any further debate?
Just a quick one.
Councillor Hobbs?
Just on page 200, about civil defence now, tsunami evacuation maps. Appears that not too many people know that we've got this in place, so maybe we should focus a bit more on that. We're going to invest in Victoria, and have been investing big time in tsunami warnings and that, but it's not reflecting in the population. And the other one is just for our continual ask to our CEO about focusing on some of the roading ones. In page 215, it just says maintenance on unsealed roads, where you've got in Bree Bay, you've got 10% of the population satisfied, Hikarangi 9%, and Monterey Heath 15%, so that's well under target. And that's why we're trying to get that looked at, because it's reinforced by the population on these surveys.
Councillor Hobbs? Councillor Murphy?
I was actually going to make the same point as Councillor Hobbs. I was quite shocked to see that half our population haven't seen the tsunami boards or don't have a planned route. I was actually really shocked when I saw that. So I think that's something we need to work on. The other point that I was going to make was about, obviously a lot of people do this survey on Facebook. I'm not sure, but you can't choose who responds to the survey. And I think it would be good to make sure we are kind of hitting, like a 50-50 sex split. Otherwise, it really skews the results. So I'm just wondering, when we find people, do we actually, if we've already got, we've already done 300 women, do we start trying to actually engage with male respondents?
The methodology is very robust in that regard, absolutely, and I'm confident of those measures. I think the point that Councillor Cuthbert made around the sample size being a total of 600, but 150 each time, it's a good challenge to the researchers just to check that statistically we're not missing out on that rigour of response. I would imagine that professionally they would not do it unless it were, so I'm hoping that is the case, Tony.
So through the chair, yes. The methodology for this is robust, but has been continually improved over the past 3 surveys that we've done. So if Council recall, back in 2017 we just did fun, then we introduced a small sample of online. We've increased that online sample, and then this year we've introduced quarterly. The questions and the methodology that we use are linked to the measures in the LTP. Obviously, we're going through an LTP process now, so this is a really good opportunity that if we want to look at either changing questions or changing methodology or increasing sample size, it's a good opportunity to do it, because we then set that parameter and methodology up for the next 3 years worth of resident surveys and monitoring their performance.
So sorry, it doesn't really answer my question. So if 69% of the respondents in every age group are female, you know, how is that happening? So when we ring people, is it women who are more likely, so when the surveyor says, hello, I'm calling on behalf of the council, I'm going to do a survey, is it more likely that the women say, yes, I've got time, and then say, I don't? Talk to my wife. Talk to my wife. Because how do we... So we have to speak to me.
So through the chair, the question is asked when a phone interview is undertaken. So there's certain details that we ask for, including gender. We're not always able to get in terms of the surveys that 50-50 split, but that's certainly something we can raise for the next.
Councillor Clark, you have a question?
Yeah. Who produces the questions for this?
So through the chair, so the questions are linked to our performance measures in the LTP. So there are certain measures that we report on that link directly back to the resident survey. So that's where they come from. The exact wording of those questions are refined through the company that we use to undertake the survey to make sure they're reasonably easy to understand. And it's also a need to keep the survey reasonably short, so people are willing to actually go through the exercise.
Just want to know, just because we, with the potential of, in a manner of speaking, a leading question, because like one of the ones, it says, with waste, I would like to reduce my household wastes more, but I'm unsure how. That in itself, to me, I read that as, I don't know how. But I might know how, but I can't do it. So is there a possibility of, in future ones, possibility of looking at the questions and making sure they're not appear to be a double question within it, a leading question? Because to me, I want to, but then, and I kind of know how, but the availability isn't there. So it's almost two questions in one. But.
So through the chair, we can certainly take that one back and look at it for next month.
Councillors, did you wish to add to the debate? No, thank you.
Councillor Deaning's leading me astray.
Yes, I can see.
Again?
Who's your responsibility, Councillor? Any further discussion? I think the most telling one was the final page of our agenda, where it puts the residents' dashboard in one, it's the full year. It's got each of the quarters. I think if there were significant variance in those percentages from each of the quarters, I would have been alarmed, but they're quite consistent all the way through, which gave me some comfort with the questioning and responses that we were consistent all the way through, and just shows where people want us to put our efforts. So I will put that motion. Those in favour? Do beg your pardon, Councillor Thomas. Of course you have.
Yeah, I just wanted to make one final little comment as well of statistics and people's opinions of them. Is that statistics actually safeguard us. So it safeguards our culture, it safeguards our social things, environment and economics. It safeguards who we are and who we want to be. As much as we want to be all one people, if we want to be able to keep our cultures, keep our uniqueness, we need to be able to provide these details so that we can see who is out there, see who we need to be able to represent, and so that we can do that for those people without just being grouped into one thing and tough. This is who you are. It's like, no, this is me. So,
Thank you, Councillor Cullen. I'll put the motion. Those in favour, aye.
Aye.
Against? Carries. Councillors, that brings us to the end of the open portion of our agenda. We do need to resolve a motion to exclude the public. Councillor Cooper is moving and Councillor Murphy is seconding. I will put that motion. Those in favour, aye. Against, carried. Thank you to our member of the public who's kept with us all the way. Cheers.